Millionaire kicks his pregnant wife out of the car and leaves her at a remote gas station. But days later, he bitterly regrets it after discovering the truth. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Evelyn Prescott stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse she shared with her husband, Travis, in downtown Los Angeles. It was late afternoon, and the golden sun cast long shadows across the sleek, grey marble floors. She pressed a hand to her gently rounded belly, feeling her daughter's subtle movement inside. The baby would be coming soon, just one more month. Yet there was no calm in Evelyn's heart. At 34, she was an accomplished marketing executive, admired for her keen sense of style and her meticulous attention to detail. She typically wore tailored suits and carried herself with a composed confidence in any boardroom. But here, in the place that should have felt most secure, she couldn't shake her unease. A few feet away, Travis, a 40-year-old real estate mogul, scrolled through emails on his phone. His broad shoulders seemed permanently tense these days, and although he was in the same room, he felt miles away. His hair, once neatly kept with a casual elegance, looked slightly disheveled, as though he'd run his hands through it in frustration too many times. Even the lines around his hazel eyes looked deeper, etched with stress and preoccupation. "Are you ever going to look away from that screen?" Evelyn asked softly. She kept her tone calm, not wanting to spark another argument, yet inside her frustration simmered. Travis glanced up, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "I have important emails from Phoenix. We're close to finalizing a lucrative commercial property deal." His voice was firm, revealing a man accustomed to getting his way in negotiations. She crossed her arms, trying to keep her anger at bay. "You didn't even notice that our dinner got cold while you were on the phone." He shifted in his seat, placing the phone on the coffee table but keeping it face up, as though any second it might demand his attention again. "Sorry, I've just got a lot on my plate right now. It's not like I'm ignoring you on purpose." Evelyn breathed in carefully, trying not to let her emotions spill over. "When we got married, we used to talk about raising a family, building a life that included more than just work. But lately, it feels like all we ever discuss is your next big deal." Travis frowned. "It's not just my deal, Evelyn. The success of these contracts benefits us both. You know that. You're not the only one who has dreams and goals." She moved from the window to the couch, sinking onto the soft cushions. "I understand that, but we haven't spent any real time together in months. Our daughter will be here soon, and I'm worried you're not even thinking about how different life will be." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You're right. Things will change. But I need to ensure we have enough security for her future. I didn't have that growing up. Everything I've built is so I don't have to go through what I went through as a kid." Evelyn knew Travis's childhood had been rough. He'd hinted before at financial struggles and a father who was more interested in chasing deals than being present. Yet, ironically, Travis now risked doing the same to his own family. "Money is important," she said, "but she needs your presence more than your credit limit." An uncomfortable silence filled the living room, punctuated only by the muted hum of the air conditioner. The atmosphere felt stifling, and Evelyn's heartbeat accelerated. She wanted to hold him, to remind him of the warmth they once shared. But something in his demeanor signaled that he was too closed off, too tense. After several moments, he stood up. "I'm going to Phoenix in a couple of days to finalize the agreement. Maybe you could come with me if you want a change of scenery." His words came out half as an offer, half as a dismissive afterthought. Surprised, Evelyn considered it. It was rare for Travis to suggest she accompany him on business trips. Perhaps, in his own awkward way, he was trying to reconnect. "All right," she said, noticing the spark of relief in his eyes. "It might be good for us." He picked up his phone and took a call, waving her off politely as if to say, "Excuse me for a minute." She watched him pace across the room, voice low and urgent. Even in his apology, he was still tethered to the demands of his work. Evelyn sighed, hoping that this trip would give them a chance to break through the walls that had grown between them. She stroked her belly absent-mindedly, her mind flickering with both hope and dread. Quietly, she wondered how many more days she could wait for his attention before it slipped away completely. The city lights began to flicker on outside, and Los Angeles glowed with an electric promise. Yet Evelyn felt isolated in that penthouse, uncertain if Travis truly understood how close they were to fracturing beyond repair. 2 days later, early morning sunlight washed over the desert highway as Travis and Evelyn headed east toward Phoenix. The wind against the car windows hummed steadily, but inside the sleek black SUV, tension brewed. Evelyn glanced over at Travis, who was staring at the road with an intense focus. His phone sat in the cup holder, notifications muted at her request so they could at least attempt to talk. They had woken at dawn. Evelyn, despite her swelling belly, had tried her best to keep pace with Travis's hurried routine: shower, dress, coffee, out the door. In the passenger seat, she clutched a travel mug of decaf tea, hoping it would settle her stomach. The baby shifted, and Evelyn unconsciously placed a hand against her abdomen. She stole a glance at her husband, noting the determined set of his jaw. "You don't have to drive so fast, Travis. We're making good time," she remarked softly, eyeing the speedometer. He exhaled through his nose, loosening his grip on the steering wheel slightly. "Yeah, sorry. It's just that I'd like to get there as soon as possible. The investors from Dallas are flying in, and they're expecting me for lunch." Evelyn nodded. Though she knew he often used tight schedules as an excuse not to engage in deeper conversations. She pulled her jacket tighter around her, feeling the slight chill of the air conditioning. "I appreciate you letting me come with you. I know this is important business." He offered a small, almost apologetic smile. "It could be good to have you there for moral support. I'm, well, dealing with a lot of pressure." She turned her gaze out the window, watching the dusty landscape roll by. Sandy hills stretched into the distance, dotted by cacti standing like silent sentinels. "I'm sure you'll manage it," she said, trying to sound supportive. "You always do." They fell into silence again. The tension felt like a third passenger in the SUV, one that wouldn't leave until someone spoke the words that truly needed to be said. As the radio played a soft country tune, Evelyn finally summoned the courage to speak her mind. "I'm worried about us," she said quietly, her fingers fidgeting with the lid of her mug. "I don't know if you realize how distant we've been. I feel like I'm just tagging along in your life these days." He sighed, carefully changing lanes. "Evelyn, I'm not trying to ignore you. This is a critical time for my company. We've got a lot riding on these deals." "I know, but there's a critical time for us too," she insisted, meeting his eyes briefly. "Our baby is coming soon, and I'd like to think we're both preparing for that, not just me alone." Travis's shoulders slumped slightly. "I understand," he said in a subdued tone. "I really do. I'm trying. Maybe after this trip, I can take a few days off. We can get the nursery ready or something." Evelyn's heart tightened at the half-hearted promise, but she clung to any sign of change. "I'd like that. Even if it's just small steps, it'd help me feel less alone in this." The SUV rumbled over a rough patch of road, jostling them. Travis switched the radio off, as if needing full silence to concentrate. The desert scenery outside had a harsh beauty, red rock formations in the distance, sprawling cacti and shrubs in the foreground. It reminded Evelyn of how vast and isolating the world could feel when communication broke down. They passed a lone gas station with a faded sign for cheap coffee. She noted it but said nothing, focusing instead on the increasing warmth in her chest. Whether it was anxiety or the baby pressing upward, she couldn't quite tell. The seatbelt felt tighter around her now. She adjusted it, exhaling slowly to steady herself. Travis's phone buzzed in the cup holder. For a moment, he glanced at it, the corner of his mouth tightening. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. She realized that the small piece they'd had was about to shatter, but instead of reaching for the device, he turned it face down. "You're right," he murmured, surprising her. "We need to spend some time together. After this meeting, let's find a nice place to have a proper meal." Despite the lingering strain, a sliver of relief broke through. Evelyn gave a tentative smile. "I'd like that. We could talk about the baby's name or something fun for a change." They drove on, the SUV's engine humming as the sun rose higher over the sprawling Arizona desert. In the distance, faint outlines of mountains marked their path. The promise of a quiet meal together felt like a small step toward reconnecting, but Evelyn couldn't fully silence the apprehension in her heart. She sensed that unresolved tensions had only been briefly set aside, not truly resolved. They arrived at a glitzy hotel in downtown Phoenix by mid-morning. Travis stepped out first, scanning the valet area for the investors he was supposed to meet. Evelyn followed more slowly, conscious of her rounded belly and the slight ache in her lower back. The swirl of travelers and business people around them made her feel both overwhelmed and oddly invisible. As they entered the lobby, Travis motioned toward a group of men in tailored suits. He turned to Evelyn. "I have to talk to them for a bit. Can you wait in the lounge? I'll try not to take too long." She nodded, trying to keep her expression neutral. "Sure, I'll be fine." "Take your time." Slipping into a plush armchair near a large indoor cactus arrangement, she watched Travis approach the group. Their conversation was animated, full of handshakes and phone checking. Evelyn sipped the complimentary lemon water offered by a passing server. Her eyes flicked between the imposing glass ceiling overhead and her husband's distant posture. A part of her wondered how long she could continue in this strange limbo, neither fully included in his world nor quite excluded. Memories bubbled up unbidden. The early days of their marriage when they had first moved to Los Angeles. Travis had been equally driven, but somehow managed to make time for her. They had taken spontaneous weekend trips along the coast, shared jokes, and dreamed of a vibrant family life. Now, she felt as though she were living alongside a stranger, one who found her presence more distracting than comforting. She glanced around the modern lounge. The architecture exuded luxury, with sleek metal accents and tall indoor plants. So many people seemed locked into their phone screens. She spotted a pregnant woman across the room, scrolling through social media. The woman's husband or partner leaned in, pointing something out on the screen, and they both laughed softly. Evelyn felt a pang of envy, how she wished Travis could share a moment like that with her. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Mum, are you waiting for someone?" Evelyn looked up to see a hotel staff member offering a polite smile. "Yes, my husband is in a meeting. I'm just resting here for a bit." The staff member nodded. "Please let us know if you need anything at all." Then, with a quick bow of the head, he moved on. Evelyn sighed and shifted in her seat. The baby gave a small kick, and she placed a hand over her belly. "You're getting restless, aren't you?" she whispered. "Mama's tired too." Across the lobby, Travis gestured toward the exit. The group of investors appeared to be heading out, possibly to a restaurant or meeting room. She wondered if he had forgotten she was waiting. Her chest tightened with anxiety. She closed her eyes briefly, imagining her unborn daughter in a peaceful nursery. The thought brought a momentary sense of calm. Suddenly, A familiar voice startled her. "Evelyn, sorry to keep you waiting." It was Travis, looming above her with a blend of haste and apology on his face. She looked up, noticing the lines of stress etched along his brow. "It's okay. I know this is your work." He rubbed the back of his neck. "They want to wrap this up quickly. It's possible we'll have to drive further out of town for the site visit. We're talking maybe a few hours from here." Her stomach sank. "A few hours? You think that's safe for me right now? I mean, 8 months along." His jaw tightened. "I understand, but I don't have much choice. We can do it tomorrow if that's better, but then we'd stay an extra night. This deal's time-sensitive." Evelyn forced a smile. "Maybe tomorrow would be better. I'm sure you can handle the meeting today and I'll just rest here, right?" He nodded, visibly relieved that she wasn't pushing back. "Great. I'll check us in and drop off the bags in our room. Then I have to go." They walked together to the marble check-in desk. Evelyn tried to tamp down the sting of disappointment. She had come on this trip hoping for more connection, but once again, she was left on the sidelines. A small voice inside told her to speak up, to demand that Travis put their relationship first for once, but fear and exhaustion held her back. Moments later, he left with a quick kiss on her cheek. "I promise we'll have dinner tonight. Really, just you and me," he said before hurrying after the investors. She watched him vanish through the lobby doors, feeling torn. A new wave of insecurity washed over her. She wanted to believe that dinner would fix the widening distance, but part of her suspected it was just a reprieve. She gazed at her wedding ring, recalling the vows they'd exchanged. In that moment, she felt an ache that went deeper than the physical. The reality of their predicament was sinking in. Travis was drifting away, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could tether him to a life he seemed too busy to share. Evelyn woke up early the next morning in the hotel suite, her stomach turning in nervous flips. She'd slept fitfully, her mind troubled by swirling thoughts of her marriage. The baby's occasional kicks had kept her company, a tender reminder that she wasn't alone. Yet she couldn't ignore the loneliness that settled over her like a heavy quilt. Travis was already dressed, standing by the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking Phoenix's skyline. The morning sun painted the room in a warm glow, but Evelyn sensed his tension. She got up carefully, padding toward him in bare feet. "You're up early," she murmured. He turned, giving a half-smile. "Couldn't sleep. Today's site visit is crucial. If everything goes well, the contract's practically ours." Evelyn studied his face. She recognized the hardened gaze of a man, laser-focused on his goal. "So, it's still a few hours' drive?" He nodded, pocketing his phone. "Yeah, in the direction of Tucson's actually, some desert land with potential for a new commercial park. I've got my colleagues waiting in the lobby. We'll caravan over." She inhaled slowly. "And me? What do you want me to do?" Travis seemed torn. "I thought you might prefer resting here instead of bouncing over rough roads. It could be a long day in the heat." A twinge of frustration sparked in her. She was tired of being told to wait, to rest, to stay out of the way. "Honestly, I'd rather come along. I didn't travel all this way just to watch TV in a hotel room, unless you'd rather I not be there." He hesitated. "It's not that. I just worry about you. And the baby." Evelyn gave a slight nod. "I appreciate your concern, but I can handle it. Let me be with you today." Seeing the determination in her eyes, Travis relented. "All right. We should leave soon, though." By 7:30, they were back on the road, following 2 other vehicles through the rugged outskirts of Phoenix. Palm trees gave way to cacti, and soon the cityscape faded into wide stretches of dry, sun-baked land. The sky was an endless expanse of blue, the heat intensifying with each mile. Travis glanced at her as they drove. Thank you for agreeing to come. I'm sorry if this hasn't been the best trip so far. Evelyn's grip on the seatbelt relaxed slightly. I just want to feel like we're on the same path. You know, not just physically, but emotionally. He reached over, briefly squeezing her hand. I hear you. They settled into a cautious silence. As they approached the desert site, Evelyn noted a rugged dirt road leading to a chain-link fence. Several men in button-down shirts were already there, chatting and pointing at printed site maps spread across car hoods. Travis parked, rolled his shoulders, and got out. Evelyn followed, shielding her eyes from the glare. The air was dry and hot, and she felt sweat forming at her temples. One of Travis's colleagues, a tall man with graying hair and an affable grin, walked over. Travis, glad you two could make it. He smiled at Evelyn. You must be Mrs. Prescott. We've heard great things about you. I'm Doug. She shook his hand. Nice to meet you, Doug. She appreciated his warmth, a contrast to the stiff greetings she usually encountered. As Travis and the others discussed zoning regulations and environmental impact reports, Evelyn hovered at the edge of the group. Occasionally, Travis would glance her way as if checking on her, but his attention quickly returned to the conversation. She tried to focus on the details, picking up phrases like projection of revenue streams and road development costs. It was a stark reminder that her world was marketing campaigns and brand strategies, not land parcels and building permits. Time passed slowly under the relentless sun. Evelyn felt the baby move, and she pressed a hand to her abdomen, worried about dehydration. She took a seat on a nearby rock, sipping water from a bottle. The men continued their discussions, moving between vantage points on the dusty property. She watched Travis in the distance, noticing how passionately he spoke about the potential for this development. A pang of longing hit her. She wanted him to speak with that same fervor about their future as a family. After what felt like hours, Doug and Travis walked back toward her. Doug looked apologetic. We'll be at this for a bit longer, but there's an air-conditioned diner a couple of miles down the main road. Would you prefer to wait there? I've got my Jeep if you need a ride. Travis spoke up. That might be best, Evelyn. No need for you to stay out here the whole time. She felt a spark of annoyance, but forced a polite nod. Okay, just don't forget about me, she said lightly, though her words carried a hint of sadness. Doug held out a hand to help her up, and she joined him in the Jeep. As they drove away, Evelyn glanced back at Travis. He stood with his back to her, focused on the men, the paperwork, and the future of a project that seemed to consume his every thought. The diner might offer some relief from the heat, but it couldn't ease the growing heat within her heart, the burning question of whether Travis truly valued her needs or if his drive for success would eclipse everything else. Late afternoon found Evelyn sitting in a corner booth of the modest diner Doug had mentioned. The place was a time capsule of mid-century Americana, with vinyl seats in bright red and vintage rock and roll tunes crackling through speakers overhead. She'd ordered an iced tea and a small sandwich she barely touched, more anxious than hungry. Through the window, she could see the blazing desert sun beginning its slow descent. Doug had been kind enough to escort her there. Then he quickly returned to the site, promising Travis would pick her up soon. That was nearly an hour ago. Evelyn tried to distract herself, fiddling with a napkin and flipping through local brochures stacked on the table. She learned about ghost towns, scenic desert trails, and small historical museums in the area. None of it calmed the knot in her chest. Eventually, the bell above the diner's door jingled. Travis appeared, looking exhausted and overheated. His tie was loose around his neck, and he had dust clinging to his shoes. Despite his fatigue, he managed a weary grin when he spotted her. Sliding into the seat across from her, he rubbed a hand over his face. "Sorry," he said in a low voice. "That took longer than I expected. Negotiations got complicated." She nodded, trying to gauge his mood. "Did you manage to finalize anything?" "Not yet. We'll probably have another round of talks tomorrow, but let's not talk about that now." His gaze softened momentarily. "How are you feeling? You've been out here in the desert for 2 days now." Evelyn forced a small laugh. "I'm okay, just tired. The baby's been active." "I wish I had the same level of energy she does." A waitress ambled over, placing a glass of water in front of Travis and topping off Evelyn's iced tea. "Ready to order something else?" she asked in a friendly drawl. Travis looked at Evelyn, a flicker of concern crossing his face. "I could use some dinner. You?" She shrugged. "Sure, we can get something." Part of her wanted to seize this chance to talk, really talk, but she wasn't sure if this diner was the right place. Still, a semblance of normalcy might help. They ordered burgers and fries, a classic meal that felt oddly comforting in the humble diner setting. As the waitress left, Travis reached across the table, resting his hand over Evelyn's. She could feel a subtle tremor in his fingers. "I know I've been pushing you away," he began quietly, "but I'm not trying to ignore you. I'm scared." His admission startled her. "Scared of what?" He hesitated, glancing around as if the old vinyl seats might offer some clue. "Of failing. Of not being the father or husband I'm supposed to be. I grew up watching my dad chase business deals, always telling me it was for my future. But he never had time for me. I swore I'd be different, yet here I am doing the same thing." Evelyn swallowed, her eyes stinging with emotion. "Then why do it?" He exhaled, releasing her hand to run his fingers through his hair. "Because I also remember what it was like not having enough. There were times we couldn't pay rent. The idea of my own daughter going through that, I can't bear it. So I push myself to ensure she'll never have to." She reached out, taking his hand again, gentler this time. "Travis, I get it. I really do. But if you never come home in time to see her first steps, or if you never listen to her stories about school, you'll be making her feel exactly how you felt, ignored and left behind." He nodded, eyes downcast. "I don't want that. Maybe it's become a habit, running so hard I can't slow down. It's like I'm on this treadmill and I don't know how to jump off without falling." Their food arrived, steaming and tempting, but both of them were too absorbed in the conversation to take more than a few bites. Evelyn's heart softened. She believed, for the first time in a long while, that he wanted to bridge the gap between them. Outside, the sky began to bleed oranges and pinks, the diner's fluorescent lights flickering on. Evelyn exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease. "Maybe tomorrow, after your next round of talks, we can take a drive somewhere in the desert. No business talk, just you, me, and the baby. Even if it's just an hour, I'd like that." He squeezed her hand gently. "That sounds good. I want that too." The faint strains of an old rock ballad floated through the diner, creating a gentle backdrop for this intimate moment. Evelyn let her eyes linger on Travis's face, hoping he would truly keep his promise. She wasn't certain what tomorrow might bring, but for now, it felt like they had taken a small step toward each other, a tentative move into unknown territory where their relationship could either heal or fracture further. The day's heat clung to them, but a cool undercurrent of possibility flowed between them, weaving together threads of hope in the quiet desert evening. Evelyn awoke with a nagging sense of unease. The Arizona sunlight cut through the thin curtains of the motel room, revealing a modest space, a worn carpet, a small table near the window, and walls painted a dull beige. Her gaze landed on Travis, who was already up, pacing in the limited space with his phone pressed to his ear. She could see tension in his furrowed brow, and every so often he glanced at her apologetically. "All right," he spoke into the phone. "Just hold off finalizing anything until I'm back in L. Hey, He ended the call, exhaling. That was my office. There's a delay on a deal I'm working out. We might need to get back sooner than planned. Evelyn swallowed her disappointment. She'd hoped for a calmer day, maybe a drive through the desert just for them. Instead, business was creeping in again. So, what now? She asked, sitting up and carefully shifting pillows behind her for support. We head back toward Phoenix, Travis said. We can still swing by that property for a quick look. Then we'll cut the trip short. She pushed the covers aside and stood, resting a hand on her belly. I'm almost afraid to ask, but do you have any time to spare for breakfast? He nodded. I have to gas up the SUV so we can grab something on the way. Let's try not to waste too much time. She noted a hint of genuine regret in his voice. Maybe he realized how often he rushed her lately. An hour later, they were on a lonely stretch of highway. The desert rolled out around them in every direction, cacti and scattered rocks baking under a harsh sun. As the fuel gauge dropped, Travis pulled into a small, run-down gas station. Its ancient pumps and a single, creaky awning told Evelyn this wasn't a typical chain stop. A sign reading Joe's Gas and Service hung unevenly near the door. She got out, stretching her legs, the heat wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. Travis headed inside to pay, leaving Evelyn in the shade of the awning. A radio from within played soft country music. A moment later, a man in his 60s emerged. He wore a faded denim shirt and a broad-brimmed hat that shielded tanned, weathered features. "Morning, ma'am," he greeted with a friendly nod, turning to fill the SUV's tank. "You folks passing through?" Evelyn smiled politely. "We're on our way back to Phoenix, actually." She noticed his name tag said Joe. "It's pretty quiet out here," Joe chuckled. "Sure is. Times changed, though. Used to get more travelers before the new highway diverted traffic." He studied her carefully, noticing her pregnancy. "Long drive for someone expecting a little one." She let out a small sigh. "It is, but my husband has business obligations. I'm just trying to keep up." Joe nodded thoughtfully. He glanced toward the station's window, where Travis stood on his phone again, appearing tense. "Sometimes men forget what matters most. Caught up in their own heads, they can't see what's right in front of them." Evelyn's cheeks warmed, surprised at the man's perceptiveness. "Yeah," she said softly. "I guess we're both feeling some pressure." He finished at the pump, wiping his hands on a rag. "Pressure can make us do foolish things if we're not careful. Take it from me, I've been there." At that moment, Travis stepped out, pocketing his phone. "Ready to go?" he asked, offering her a small smile. Then he turned to Joe with a polite nod. "Thanks. Keep the change." Joe tipped his hat. "You folks drive safe. And remember, sometimes a little patience goes a long way." Evelyn felt a strange pull toward his words, a hint of wisdom that comforted her in a way she couldn't quite explain. She gave him a slight wave, stepping back into the SUV. As Travis pulled away, she looked over her shoulder, seeing Joe watching them leave. There was a knowing kindness in his gaze, as though he sensed tension that ran deeper than an ordinary traveler's pit stop. They headed down the highway, the sky a brassy blue overhead. Inside the car, Evelyn tried to share Joe's remark. "That man back there reminded me a bit of my grandfather, always offering folksy advice." Travis flicked on the air conditioner. "I guess he's used to seeing all sorts come through his station," he said absently, his mind seemingly elsewhere. Evelyn studied him. "He mentioned patience. He said it can make all the difference." Travis drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. "Maybe he's right. I'm just feeling the clock ticking. We have to figure out so much before the baby arrives. Housing expansions, finances, everything." She nodded, recognizing the familiar wave of frustration rising in her chest. "I'm well aware we need stability. But have you considered that I might need your emotional support more than any fancy addition to the house? Sometimes I wonder if you see how hard this pregnancy has been on me." His expression hardened. "Of course I care. I'm doing this for us." You think it's easy for me to juggle everything?" Evelyn turned her gaze to the window, her heart pounding with a mix of anger and concern. As the SUV tore down the empty road, she couldn't help recalling Joe's words about how pressure could lead to foolish actions. The sense of unease she'd felt upon waking was back, stronger now. She let out a tense breath, silently hoping the next moments would prove Joe's advice right and not just fade away into the desert sun. The next miles passed in a haze of heated silence. Travis, eyes on the road, spoke only to answer short questions. Evelyn, arms folded protectively over her belly, stared out the passenger window. The tension between them felt near suffocating, as though the Arizona desert wasn't scorching enough. Finally, a ringtone shattered the quiet. Travis snatched up his phone, swerving slightly. Evelyn's heartbeat quickened, but she gritted her teeth. "Travis, watch it." He ignored her caution, muttering something into the phone. From what she could glean, the call was about the delayed Los Angeles deal. The conversation escalated, and Evelyn could hear him defending himself aggressively. "I'm doing all I can here," he snapped, "but if those investors want to back out, then—" He stopped mid-sentence, listening, jaw clenched tight. When the call ended, he hurled the phone onto the console with a heavy sigh. "Unbelievable," he grumbled. "Everything's falling apart at once." Evelyn tried to keep her voice steady. "Maybe we should pull over for a bit. You're driving too fast, and the stress isn't helping either of us." "I'm fine," he insisted, though his face told a different story. His eyes flicked to her and then to her belly. "I just need to cool off. Let's stop at the next station." She nodded, relief coursing through her. Another few miles flew by, and they spotted a lone gas station perched at the edge of a dusty side road. A battered sign advertised cheap gas and cold drinks in flaking letters. Travis pulled in, tires crunching on gravel. Inside the SUV, neither moved at first. Evelyn could sense Travis's frustration, a storm brewing behind his eyes. "Do you want anything?" she asked softly. "Water, maybe?" He let out a harsh chuckle. "No, thanks. I just need a moment to think." He turned the ignition off. Evelyn stepped out, wincing at the sudden heat assaulting her face. The station's rusted awning provided minimal shade. She trudged toward the door, noticing how empty the place looked. No other cars, no sign of life except a single, flickering neon sign in the window. Travis eventually followed, hands shoved in his pockets. "You know," he said, voice low, "it's bad enough this whole trip has been a headache, but now Ella A is calling me back like I can just teleport." She tried to muster sympathy. "Travis, we all have to handle stress, but that doesn't mean you can shut me out. I came because I wanted to be here for you." He scoffed. "And do what exactly? Criticize every time I check my phone? Question every decision I make?" His tone was sharper than she'd ever heard it. Evelyn felt a defensive anger rising. "This isn't about controlling your decisions. It's about feeling like I exist in your world. Lately, it's like you only see me as an inconvenience." "Inconvenience?" He shook his head, raising his voice despite the empty station. "You have no idea the weight on my shoulders. I'm trying to secure our future. I'm trying to be the provider I never had. Why can't you just—" She couldn't hold back anymore. "Why can't I just what, Travis? Stay quiet and watch you spiral into the same type of father you hated growing up, because you're too stubborn to see you're pushing me away?" He looked stunned by her words, and for a moment, Evelyn thought she saw a flicker of pain in his eyes. But pride won out. He glanced around the dusty station, then back at her, voice trembling with fury. "If you're so convinced I'm a monster, then stay here. I'm done with this conversation." Her jaw dropped. "Travis, don't be ridiculous. I'm 8 months pregnant, in the middle of nowhere." Without warning, he yanked open the driver's door and started the engine. "You think I'm playing games?" Get in if you want, but if all you're going to do is lecture me, maybe we're both better off taking a break." For a moment, she froze, heartbreak and shock mingling in her chest. "Stop, please. Let's just talk this through." Instead of responding, Travis put the car in reverse. She took a step back, panic surging. Was he actually leaving? The SUV jerked backward, wheels kicking up dust. "Travis!" Evelyn shouted, running toward the car. But he slammed on the brakes only long enough to glare at her through the rolled-down window. His voice came out raw. "If you want out of this life, you can have it. Right here, right now." Then he hit the gas, speeding off. A swirl of dust engulfed Evelyn, making her cough and stumble. She watched the SUV's taillights vanish down the empty highway, tears stinging her eyes. She could hardly breathe. Her husband, her partner of 5 years, had just left her stranded. Standing in the sweltering heat, Evelyn felt as though the desert sun had burned away every last shred of certainty. She was alone, pregnant, abandoned without resources. The reality of his decision hit her like a blow to the chest, and she struggled to draw a steady breath. In the distance, the wind hissed over the arid land, offering no comfort at all. Evelyn pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Travis's SUV was gone, leaving nothing but a trail of dust and heartbreak. The midday sun bore down relentlessly, the heat so intense she felt lightheaded. She forced herself to move toward the station building, heart pounding. Inside, a narrow store offered a few shelves of snacks, bottled water, and soda. An older woman wearing a worn blue apron stood behind a grimy counter, flipping through a dog-eared magazine. She looked up, startled at the sudden entrance. "Hello, dear," the woman said, eyeing Evelyn's tear-streaked face and visibly pregnant belly. "You all right?" Evelyn let out a shaky breath. "Not exactly. My husband just drove off and left me here." Her voice quivered, the gravity of the words still sinking in. The woman's eyes widened. "Lord have mercy. Are you serious?" She slid the magazine aside. "I'm Darlene. Honey, do you need a phone? Or maybe some water? You look pale." "Yes, please," Evelyn whispered. She took the offered bottled water and sipped, grateful for the cool liquid soothing her dry throat. "Thank you. I'm Evelyn." Darlene gestured to a stool near the counter. "Sit. Take a load off." Carefully, Evelyn perched on the stool, her back aching from stress and the baby's weight. "Do you have a phone I can use?" "My cell is in my husband's car and Evelyn's voice trailed off, realizing she had no way to contact Travis or anyone else. She didn't even have her purse. "Sure do," Darlene replied, pulling an ancient cordless phone from beneath the counter. "You can try calling someone, but there's a chance the line's spotty. Our service out here isn't the best." "We're about 30 miles from the nearest decent cell tower." Evelyn dialed her best friend's number in Los Angeles, her hands shaking. The call dropped after one ring. She tried again, only to hear static. Feeling desperation creep in, she handed the phone back. "It's not going through." "Figures," Darlene said. "That line's hit or miss. We get better reception a couple miles down the highway. But no, well, that's a ways to walk." Evelyn ran a hand over her forehead, trying to stay calm. A wave of dizziness passed through her, and she took another sip of water. The baby fluttered inside her, as if sensing her distress. Darlene eyed her with concern. "You might want to stay put until evening when it's cooler." "I don't see folks stopping here much since the bypass was built." Evelyn nodded slowly, her voice a near whisper. "I think I need to. I just don't know where I'll go after that." They were interrupted by the jingle of the glass door. A tall figure stepped in, wearing a familiar faded denim shirt and a broad-brimmed hat. Evelyn's eyes widened. She recognized him from a previous stop. It was Joe, the kindly attendant they'd met at another station. "Afternoon, Darlene," he said, tipping his hat before turning to Evelyn. Real worry creased his face. "I thought that car looked familiar, but I saw it speed off a ways back. What happened?" Evelyn swallowed, fighting tears. "Travis, he just left. We argued and he drove away. I'm stranded." Joe exchanged a shocked glance with Darlene, then laid a gentle hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "I'm real sorry to hear that. Here, let's not panic yet. Let's figure out a plan." He helped her to a small table by the window where she could sit more comfortably. Evelyn felt a flutter of relief that at least someone she'd spoken to before was here. There was a reassuring solidity to Joe. His calm, steady demeanor soothed her frayed nerves. Darlene joined them. "We've got a tiny back room you can rest in if you like, Evelyn. This store used to be a bigger operation, but now it's mostly just me and the occasional traveler." Evelyn dabbed at her eyes. "Thank you. I'm sorry to be such trouble." Joe shook his head. "Don't apologize. You didn't ask for this. Now, if there's anyone you can call, a friend, family, we can keep trying the phone, or we can see if I can drive you someplace, though my own station is on the other side of the county." She took a deep breath, considering her options. The thought of traveling hours in a random pickup truck made her uneasy, but so did the idea of staying put without resources. "I do have a friend in L.A., but I couldn't get through. Maybe we could try again later this evening." "Of course," Darlene said. "In the meantime, you just rest. We'll figure something out." Evelyn nodded, exhaustion washing over her. Everything felt surreal. Less than an hour ago, she'd been at Travis's side, albeit in conflict. Now, she was in a musty desert station, leaning on the kindness of strangers. She wondered if Travis would come to his senses and return. But as she stared out the window at the endless stretch of road, doubt gnawed at her. For now, she was in a world she never expected. One without the safety net of her husband's presence or the comforts of their life in Los Angeles. Evelyn followed Darlene into the small back room of the gas station, a storage area filled with old boxes and dusty shelves. The woman cleared a space on a rickety cot, placing a folded blanket for extra padding. "It's not the Ritz," Darlene said with an apologetic shrug, "but at least you can lie down for a bit." "Thank you," Evelyn murmured, lowering herself onto the makeshift bed. The baby gave a strong kick, almost as if protesting the cramped conditions. She winced. "He's feisty today." Darlene eyed Evelyn's stomach with a gentle smile. "That's good. Means she's healthy." Joe appeared, carrying a small plastic bag. "I found some juice and a couple of granola bars. Might help keep your energy up." He offered them to Evelyn, who accepted gratefully. "Thank you both," she said quietly. She hadn't eaten much since the night before. Between the emotional upheaval and the heat, her appetite had vanished. Still, she forced herself to sip the juice. She needed strength, especially with the baby so close to term. Joe leaned against a metal shelf. "I gotta head back to my place soon. My station won't run itself. But I can come back later if you'd like a ride somewhere. Not sure how far we can get with your condition, though." Evelyn's mind buzzed with questions. Where could she go? She had no money, no phone, and no real plan. "I'm not even sure what the next step is," she admitted. "Maybe I can reach my friend in L.A. and have her wire something or drive out here." Darlene nodded. "You can stay as long as you need. There's not much traffic, so it won't be too noisy, but it also means there aren't many folks around. If you want, I can ask around the few regulars we get, see if anyone's heading toward Phoenix or L.A." Evelyn tried to muster a grateful smile. "You've already done so much." "I appreciate it." Joe checked his wristwatch. "I can come by at sundown. If you haven't made other arrangements, we'll figure something out." She nodded, a fresh wave of relief washing over her. She recalled how comforting Joe's presence had been at the other gas station. There was something almost paternal about his concern. After exchanging numbers with Darlene, just in case the phone line cooperated, Joe tipped his hat and stepped out. As the day stretched on, Evelyn drifted in and out of restless sleep, her body depleted from the emotional ordeal. At one point, she got up to use the restroom and splashed cool water on her face. Catching her reflection in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. Her eyes were puffy from crying, her cheeks pale. "Come on," she whispered to the reflection. "We can do this." In the late afternoon, a rumble outside signaled the arrival of a truck. She heard Darlene's voice greeting someone, followed by a muffled reply. Curiosity piqued. Evelyn ventured out to find a young couple perusing the snack aisle, a man in a flannel shirt and a woman with curly hair pinned back, wearing a concerned expression. "Oh, hi," the woman said, noticing Evelyn's belly. "We're just passing through. I'm Lily, and this is Todd." Evelyn introduced herself briefly. Darlene piped in. "Evelyn's stuck here for a bit. Her husband took off and left her." She turned to Todd and Lily. "They're heading north, dear. Maybe they could drop you somewhere along the way." Todd rubbed the back of his neck. "We're going as far as Flagstaff, but I'm not sure if that helps you get to where you need to be." Evelyn considered it. She needed to contact her friend in Los Angeles, but going to Flagstaff might just take her even farther from major airports or bus stations. "Thank you," she said, "but I think Phoenix is closer to L.A. I'm waiting to see if Joe can come back for me." Lily gave a sympathetic nod. "I'm so sorry you're going through this. That's terrible." She reached into her purse, pulling out a small wad of bills. "Here, it's not much, but maybe it can help you get a bus ticket when you decide where you're heading." Tears sprang to Evelyn's eyes at the generosity of these strangers. "That's very kind, but—" "No, please take it," Lily insisted. "We've all needed a hand at some point in our lives." With trembling fingers, Evelyn accepted the money. She thanked them repeatedly, her voice choked with emotion. Todd gave her a concerned smile. "Hang in there," he said, then turned to Darlene. "We'll pay for our gas and be on our way." After they left, Evelyn stood behind the counter for a moment, staring down at the small amount of cash in her palm. She felt both gratitude and a humbling sense of vulnerability. Darlene cleared her throat, placing a gentle hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "Sometimes it's okay to accept kindness. Doesn't make you weak." Evelyn nodded, the sting of tears returning. She'd always prided herself on independence, forging her path in the marketing world, making her own money. Now she relied on the goodwill of strangers in a deserted gas station. Her emotions were a tangled knot of embarrassment, relief, and desperation. As dusk settled, the blistering heat eased into a cooler twilight. The desert sky glowed with shades of orange and pink that softened into purple. Evelyn gathered her thoughts, reminding herself she wasn't entirely alone. She held a flicker of hope that Joe's return, or a decent phone connection, would offer a way forward. The uncertainty weighed on her, but for the moment, she was safe. That had to be enough. Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, headlights cut across the deserted station lot. Evelyn looked up from the chipped formica table where she sat with Darlene. She recognized Joe's truck pulling in, but behind it was an older RV that parked a short distance away. Its engine rumbled, then fell silent. Joe walked in, dusting off his denim shirt. "Evening, ladies. Everything all right?" Darlene gave him a relieved smile. "We're fine." Evelyn's been holding up, but she's been anxious, waiting to see what her next move might be. Evelyn rose from the table, careful not to strain her back. "Did you come to check on me?" Joe nodded. "Sure did. And I might have brought some help." He gestured toward the RV, from which an elderly couple emerged. The woman, wearing a floral blouse, waved cheerfully, while the man, in well-worn khakis, offered a friendly nod. Meet Margaret and Henry Carter. They've been traveling through the Southwest, stopped by my station earlier and heard about your situation. Margaret approached first, extending a gentle hand. Evelyn, dear, we're so sorry to hear what happened. Joe told us you're trying to get back to Los Angeles, or at least find safe lodging. Henry, a tall man with kind eyes, gave a soft smile. We've got some space in our RV if you'd like to join us for a bit. We'll be heading toward Phoenix tomorrow, then further west. Touched by their generosity, Evelyn blinked back tears. I don't know what to say. You hardly know me. Margaret exchanged a glance with Henry. We've been married nearly 50 years. We've seen our share of ups and downs, and we know how important a little help can be at times like these. We're not fancy, but our RV is comfortable and safe. Evelyn hesitated, recalling how Lily and Todd had also offered assistance earlier. She felt overwhelmed by the kindness of strangers after having been abandoned by someone she trusted most. I'd be grateful, she managed, voice trembling with relief, but I don't want to impose. Joe laid a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You'd be far safer with them than hanging around here alone. Darlene's got her own life, and I can't be in two places at once. This might be your best shot at getting back on your feet. Margaret offered a gentle smile. We have a small fold-out bed. You can rest as much as you need, and if you need to see a doctor, we can stop. Henry's no speed demon behind the wheel, I promise. Darlene looked between them all, a mix of relief and sadness in her expression. You'll be all right, Evelyn. But you better promise to call me or Joe if anything changes, okay? We've grown fond of you in these last hours. Evelyn nodded, fighting back another wave of tears. I will. Thank you, Darlene, for everything. She then gathered the few belongings she had, a water bottle, the granola bars, and Lily's donated cash, and stepped outside. The evening air was cooler now, and a gentle breeze rustled her hair. Henry and Margaret helped her climb into the RV, which was spacious enough to have a small kitchenette and a cozy seating area. Its interior had a lived-in charm, floral seat covers, family photos taped to the walls, and a faint aroma of fresh coffee lingering in the air. Margaret guided her to a small pull-out bed near the back. Here you are. Please make yourself comfortable. We have clean blankets and pillows in that cabinet. Evelyn nodded, too overwhelmed to speak for a moment. The baby moved, reminding her of the stakes. Thank you, she finally said, resting a hand on her belly. I can't tell you how much this means to me. Margaret sat next to her, patting her shoulder. Think nothing of it. We're just paying forward the kindness we received when we were young. You focus on that baby and your health. Henry maneuvered into the driver's seat while Joe chatted with him through the open window. Outside, Darlene waved goodbye. Then the RV's engine rumbled to life. Through the windshield, the desert stretched endlessly, darkening under the starry sky. Evelyn leaned back against the cushions, letting out a slow breath. As they pulled away, Margaret asked gently, Would you like to talk about what happened? Sometimes sharing helps. Evelyn felt the knot in her throat tighten. I'm still trying to process it. Travis and I, well, it's been strained for months. He's so focused on his real estate deals, and I'm just overshadowed by it all. But I never imagined he'd do something like this. Henry spoke from the driver's seat, voice carrying a reassuring warmth. He must have been under a lot of stress, but that doesn't excuse leaving you behind. Especially not at 8 months pregnant. Evelyn's eyes welled. I keep wondering if he'll regret it, if he'll come looking for me. But how do I forgive something like that? Margaret handed her a tissue. You don't have to have all the answers tonight. Just know we'll help you however we can. Touched by their compassion, Evelyn let a few tears slip. She realized she wasn't ready to give up on everything she and Travis had built, but also that something fundamental was broken. The relief of having somewhere safe to rest soothed the immediate panic, yet uncertainty loomed. The RV rumbled along the quiet highway, headlights carving a path through the darkness. Outside, the desert seemed endless and mysterious, a stark contrast to the posh Los Angeles life Evelyn had grown used to. But in the gentle company of Margaret and Henry, she felt a glimmer of hope, a reminder that not all in the world was harsh or unkind. By midday of the following day, Henry carefully navigated the RV down a narrow street in a small Arizona town. The place had a quaint charm, dusty sidewalks lined with potted cacti, a faded mural on a cafe wall, and a single traffic light that blinked yellow. Margaret explained that they'd planned to stop here for supplies before continuing on to Phoenix. Evelyn peered out the window, feeling a measure of calm after a decent night's sleep on the RV's fold-out bed. They parked outside a modest motel, a sign advertising vacancy in flickering neon. "We could stay here one night," Margaret suggested, stepping down from the RV. "Maybe see if there's a better phone connection so you can reach your friend." Henry helped Evelyn out, offering his arm for support. "Careful on that step, don't rush." Evelyn smiled gratefully. She appreciated how protective they were. But a pang of sadness reminded her that these gestures should have been Travis's. "Thank you," she said quietly. The motel's lobby smelled of stale coffee and warm air freshener. A middle-aged woman with dyed red hair stood behind the counter, arms folded. Her name tag read, "Lisa." She eyed them warily. "Can I help you folks?" Margaret spoke up, voice kind. "We need a room or two, if you have any available." Lisa handed over a small registration card. "Fill this out." Her gaze flicked to Evelyn's belly, then back to Margaret. "How long you plan on staying?" Henry answered. "Probably just one night, maybe two. We're traveling to Phoenix after that." The woman tapped a pen against the counter. "That'll be $65 a night, plus tax for each room." Margaret nodded and opened her purse. "We can share one room if it has 2 beds. Evelyn, honey, would that be okay?" Evelyn shrugged, grateful for any roof over her head. "Yes, that's fine. I'll sleep anywhere at this point." Lisa watched their exchange with a flat expression. Once Margaret paid, Lisa turned the guest registry for them to sign. "Room 12, ground floor," she said curtly, handing over a key on a plastic fob. "Checkout's at 11 sharp." Margaret forced a polite smile. "Thanks," she said, leading the way out of the lobby. Outside, the midday sun was bright, though not as scorching as the day before. They found room 12 at the end of a narrow hallway, its windows facing a dusty parking lot. Inside, the room was cramped but relatively clean. 2 double beds, a small table, and a battered dresser with an aging TV perched on top. Henry set down his duffel bag and sighed. "Home, sweet home. For now. Margaret and I can take the bed by the door. Evelyn, you can have the other one." Evelyn eased onto the bed, testing the mattress. It squeaked, but felt serviceable. She thanked them and then asked, "Do you think we could try to call my friend from here?" "Maybe the service is better in town," Margaret nodded. "We'll ask the front desk about a phone. Let's see if Lisa can offer any guidance." When they returned to the lobby, Lisa shook her head. "Phones in the rooms don't do long distance unless you use a calling card. There's a payphone out front if you want to try your luck." Evelyn's chest tightened. She realized she only had a small amount of cash that Lily had given her. "Could I break this bill for some quarters?" she asked, handing over a 20. Lisa's eyes lingered on the worn bill. She hesitated, then shrugged. "Sure." She exchanged the money for quarters and singles. Evelyn mumbled her thanks. Stepping out to the battered payphone near the parking lot, she deposited a few coins, dialed her friend's number in Los Angeles, and waited. 1 ring, 2 rings, then static. She tried again, and the line simply went dead. Disappointed, she cradled the receiver. Perhaps the connection was too weak, or her friend was unavailable. As she turned back to the motel entrance, Lisa stepped outside, lighting a cigarette. She glanced at Evelyn with mild suspicion. "You trying to skip town without paying or something?" she asked sarcastically, smoke curling from her lips. Evelyn blinked, taken aback. "Excuse me." Lisa exhaled sharply. "Look, I'm not in the charity business. You came in with those nice folks, but I've seen plenty of travelers skip on their bills. Make sure you settle up in the morning, pregnant or not." Her tone made Evelyn's blood boil. "Of course we'll pay. We already did, and we aren't planning on staying longer than we need to." Lisa shrugged. "I'm just telling you how it is. No freebies here." Evelyn bristled at the insinuation. "I appreciate your concern, but you don't need to worry about me taking advantage." "We'll be gone soon enough." Lisa stubbed out her cigarette, flicking the butt into a nearby tray. "Fine. Just making sure we understand each other." She pivoted, heading back into the lobby. Evelyn took a steadying breath, fighting the urge to snap back. She recognized that Lisa probably dealt with all kinds of transient folk, but it still felt insulting. Despite Henry and Margaret's kindness, Evelyn felt the sting of her precarious situation. She had no credit card, no ID, no direct contact with the outside world. Lisa's suspicion only underscored how vulnerable she was. Shaking off the encounter, Evelyn made her way back to room 12. Margaret looked up from unpacking a small travel kettle. "No luck with the phone?" she asked gently. Evelyn shook her head. "Not yet, but maybe we can try again later, or find a different phone in town." Margaret nodded. "We'll figure it out." "Don't worry." Evelyn sank onto the bed, her body heavy with fatigue and frustration. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the first of many hurdles. Still, she took solace in her unlikely allies, the kindly elderly couple who had stepped into the void Travis had left behind. Though exhaustion weighed on her, a small kernel of determination remained, pushing her to believe she would find a way forward, no matter how daunting the path might be. Evelyn woke to the thin morning light filtering through the ragged curtains of room 12. The air conditioner rattled in the wall, fighting the Arizona heat. She rubbed her eyes, still feeling the weight of exhaustion. Her body ached from the strain of pregnancy, and her mind churned with worries. Margaret was already up, quietly boiling water in a small electric kettle for coffee. Henry, still in bed, stirred at the sound. "Morning," Margaret said softly, noticing Evelyn's shift. She handed over a steaming paper cup of decaf instant coffee. "How'd you sleep, dear?" Evelyn managed a wan smile. "Better than I expected. Thank you for everything." Henry sat up, stretching his arms. "We can't stay here indefinitely. We should figure out our next steps." "Does it make sense to head straight to Phoenix today?" Evelyn considered it, recalling how attempts to call her friend in Los Angeles had failed. "Yes, Phoenix has better infrastructure. Maybe I can contact someone there. But I don't have much money." Margaret waved a hand dismissively. "Don't worry about that. We'll manage together. Let's just get you somewhere you can safely await the baby's arrival." The older couple's kindness brought tears to Evelyn's eyes. She excused herself to the bathroom, splashing water on her face. Staring at her reflection in the tiny mirror, she tried to rally her courage. She was still grappling with the sting of Travis's betrayal, but dwelling on it wouldn't solve anything right now. While Henry and Margaret gathered their belongings, Evelyn stepped outside, hoping to grab a moment of fresh air. She spotted Lisa behind the motel lobby's counter, eyeing her through the glass. Evelyn braced herself for more brusque remarks, but Lisa simply glanced away. It was a small relief not to be confronted again. She walked along the side of the motel, noticing a narrow alley leading to a small diner. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifted by. Her stomach rumbled, reminding her she hadn't had a decent meal in days. Maybe they'd find a quick breakfast before hitting the road. A sudden jab of pain across her lower back stopped her in her tracks. She grimaced, pressing a hand against her belly. The baby shifted, and a wave of tension rippled through her. Fear flickered in her mind. Was she going into labor early, or was it just another Braxton Hicks contraction? She stayed still, breathing slowly until the discomfort passed. Returning to the room, she found Margaret by the bed, folding blankets. Henry was placing their small suitcases by the door. "You feeling okay?" Margaret asked, concern evident in her voice. "I'm fine," Evelyn murmured, not wanting to worry them, just a bit sore. Normal pregnancy stuff. They decided to check out and find a quick breakfast on the main road. Lisa barely looked up as they turned in their key. The final bill settled. They left the motel behind without fanfare. Outside, Henry guided Evelyn into the RV, while Margaret climbed into the front passenger seat. Moments later, they were pulling onto the street, the sun glinting off the RV's windshield. As they rolled through the modest town, they spotted a tiny diner with a flickering neon sign reading "Rubies." Inside, it was charmingly outdated. Vinyl booths, a long counter with spinning stool, and walls adorned with photos of the Grand Canyon. A waitress named Delia greeted them with a friendly smile. Margaret and Henry ordered coffee, while Evelyn hesitantly asked for orange juice and a light breakfast. "How about scrambled eggs and toast?" Delia suggested. "That sounds good," Evelyn replied, realizing just how hungry she was. She noticed Delia's sympathetic glance toward her pregnant belly. Surrounded by the cheerful hum of the morning crowd, Evelyn let a sliver of normalcy sink in. Once the food arrived, they ate quietly, each lost in thought. The baby kicked again, this time without the sharp edge of pain. Evelyn focused on the positive. She still had time before her due date, and maybe, in Phoenix, she'd find a better way to contact someone she trusted. Henry finally broke the silence. "After breakfast, we'll gas up and take the highway toward Phoenix. Shouldn't be more than a couple hours, right, Margaret?" Margaret nodded. "About that, yes. We can find a proper motel in the city. One with reliable phones and maybe better hospital access if needed." Evelyn's chest tightened at the mention of hospitals. The reality that she might have to deliver on her own, far from Los Angeles, was becoming more tangible. Still, she forced a small smile. "Let's do it. Thank you both." They settled the tab, stepping out into the warm mid-morning light. In the diner parking lot, Evelyn took a moment to watch passers-by, a family packing their sedan for a road trip, a man in jeans and a straw hat walking his dog. None of them knew her story. None of them guessed she was effectively stranded without her husband. But she took a breath, reminding herself that with Margaret and Henry's help, she was no longer truly alone. As the RV started up, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that her challenges were only just beginning. Yet a spark of hope flickered. Perhaps soon she'd be able to call her best friend or even face Travis again. For now, she had no choice but to keep moving forward, despite the shaky ground beneath her feet. Travis Prescott drove through the desert with a white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel, his mind a maelstrom of guilt and confusion. Days had passed since he'd abandoned Evelyn at that lonely gas station. The initial surge of anger that drove him away had dissipated, replaced by a gnawing remorse. Each sunrise brought a new wave of doubt. What had he done? He'd spent time in Phoenix tying up the commercial real estate deal, but even the signed contracts and congratulatory handshakes felt hollow. At night, alone in a business suite, he wrestled with nightmares. Scenes of Evelyn calling out for help while he turned his back on her. Now, on the long drive back toward Los Angeles, he found himself veering off course, compelled to revisit places he'd passed earlier. Stopping at a desolate rest area, he parked under the brutal midday sun. Sweat trickled down his temples as he stepped out, scanning the empty stalls and the lone vending machine. He remembered this rest area from 2 days before, when he'd been in a furious rush. Now, in the silence, he could almost hear Evelyn's voice pleading with him to slow down. He re-entered the SUV, slamming the door behind him. Glancing at the passenger seat, he imagined her sitting there, her hand on her belly, worry in her eyes. The memory was a punch to the gut. Starting the engine, he drove on, uncertain where he was headed. Eventually, he spotted a familiar gas station sign. It was the place run by Joe, the older man who had told Evelyn that sometimes men needed a dose of patience. Travis pulled in, hoping to find a clue about where Evelyn might have gone afterward. He exited the car, the desert wind whipping dust around his feet. The station looked the same, faded signage, one pump under a creaking awning. Joe stepped out of the small office, eyeing Travis with careful recognition. "Didn't expect to see you back," he said, voice flat. Travis cleared his throat. "I'm looking for my wife." Shame choked him as he forced the words out. "Evelyn, she's pregnant. Have you seen her?" Joe's gaze hardened. "Sure did. Days ago, you drove off, left her standing right there." He motioned toward a patch of gravel. "She was scared and alone." Travis swallowed, voice trembling. I know. I lost my temper. It was a horrible mistake." Joe stood silently for a moment, then shook his head. "Not sure where she went afterward. Last I saw, she was heading toward another station, but I don't know which. Deserts are big places. You might try checking around the smaller towns east of here." Shame twisted in Travis's gut. He wanted to ask Joe why he hadn't stopped him, but realized how absurd that sounded. This was entirely on him. "All right," he said lamely. "I'll keep searching." He turned to go, then paused. "If she comes back this way, please tell her I'm looking for her, that I'm sorry." Joe frowned. "I'd tell her, but you better hope she's okay. A desert ain't forgiving." Travis nodded, swallowing hard as he returned to his SUV. He drove away, face grim, haunted by the image of Evelyn's stricken expression. Memories from his own childhood flared in his mind. The countless days he'd waited by the window for a father who never returned on time, never cared to spend a weekend tossing a baseball or attending a school event. All those lonely hours he'd promised himself he'd never inflict on anyone else. Yet here he was, doing worse. He'd physically driven off and left his pregnant wife. His phone buzzed against the console, snapping him out of his thoughts. A number from Los Angeles. He answered, half hoping it was Evelyn, but it was a colleague from his real estate firm. The man rambled on about contract signings and deposit deadlines, sounding pleased with their new prospects. Travis barely processed it, cutting him off. "I can't talk business right now. I'm dealing with a family emergency." Ignoring the man's confused reply, Travis hung up. He took a long, shaky breath, adjusting his grip on the wheel. The fear gnawing at him was nearly paralyzing. What if she'd run into trouble out here? What if something happened to the baby? He whispered into the quiet SUV. "Evelyn, please be all right." The dryness of the air stung his eyes, or maybe it was the tears forming. He remembered the vow he'd made to her on their wedding day, standing beneath white lights and fragrant flowers, telling her he'd always protect her. Instead, he had become the very source of her greatest risk. As he continued to drive, the desert stretched endlessly, a harsh reminder of his choice. Each passing mile without answers felt like a personal torture, a penance he knew he deserved. Swallowing against the tightness in his throat, Travis pressed on, uncertain how he would find Evelyn, but certain he couldn't rest until he did. Evelyn arrived in Phoenix with Margaret and Henry in the early afternoon. The city's skyline rose from the desert floor, a mix of modern glass towers and sprawling suburban neighborhoods. After the sleepy motels and tiny diners they'd passed, Phoenix felt almost overwhelming. Henry steered the RV through traffic until they found a modest motel near a medical clinic, just in case Evelyn needed care. The motel was a step up from the last one, a small pool in the courtyard, palm trees lining the parking lot, and a front desk clerk who at least smiled at check-in. Margaret used her credit card to secure 2 rooms. "We'll get one for us and one for you," she told Evelyn, though Evelyn fretted about the expense. "I'll pay you back one day," Evelyn said softly as they headed toward the rooms. "I promise." Margaret patted her arm. "Let's focus on keeping you healthy." "That's payment enough." In her room, Evelyn sank onto the bed. The baby stirred, and she inhaled slowly. She realized her phone was still with Travis, and she had no official ID. She felt like a ghost, drifting on the kindness of near strangers. Desperate for a sense of control, she headed outside, determined to find a payphone or somewhere she could make a long-distance call. Margaret joined her, worried about letting Evelyn wander alone. They walked a few blocks under the searing sun, eventually locating a small strip mall with a grocery store. Inside, cool air greeted them. Near the exit stood a line of vending machines and a payphone tucked against the wall. Evelyn felt a spark of hope. She dug out the quarters she had left and dialed her best friend, Tara, in Los Angeles. 1 ring. 2. "Hello," came a familiar voice. Relief washed over Evelyn so powerfully that she almost dropped the phone. "Tara, it's me," Evelyn managed, tears pricking her eyes. "I'm calling from a payphone. I don't have my cell." "Evelyn, where are you? I've been worried sick." Tara sounded alarmed. "Travis called me a couple of days ago, but I couldn't get details from him. He was frantic, said he was looking for you. What's going on?" Evelyn's breath hitched, so Travis had tried to reach out. "He left me in the Arizona desert. Tara. We had a huge fight and he just drove off. But I'm safe now. This couple found me, and I'm in Phoenix for the moment." "Oh my God," Tara gasped. "Are you okay? The baby?" "We're hanging on," Evelyn said, glancing at Margaret for reassurance. "But I need help. I don't have money, no ID, nothing. Can you wire me some funds or come here?" "Of course," Tara agreed without hesitation. "Tell me where to send it. And I'll pack a bag if you need me to come out there." With Margaret's help, Evelyn relayed the motel's name and address. Tara promised to do whatever necessary to help Evelyn get home safely or to prepare for the baby's arrival. They ended the call with mutual relief, though Evelyn's heart still pounded from the adrenaline rush. At least now she had a lifeline. Margaret embraced her gently. "That's wonderful news. You have someone you can rely on." "You'll be back on your feet soon." Evelyn wiped her eyes. "Thank you for coming with me, for everything. I can't believe how quickly my life turned upside down." They purchased a few groceries before heading back. Once at the motel, Henry greeted them with a concerned expression. "Everything all right?" Evelyn recounted the call with Tara. Henry smiled, relief on his face. "Good. That's a step in the right direction." But as evening closed in, Evelyn felt herself battling a storm of emotions. She paced outside her room, too restless to sleep. The lit pool in the courtyard shimmered, and she watched a few guests splashing and laughing, seemingly without a care. Her mind returned to Travis. His frantic call to Tara proved he was feeling remorse, maybe even fear. She sank into a plastic chair near the pool, the evening air warm against her cheeks. Could she forgive him if he found her? Could she trust him not to abandon her again? The sting of betrayal ran deep. Yet she also felt the gnawing worry that something was happening to him, that maybe he was as lost as she was. Margaret came out, placing a hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "Honey, try to get some rest. Stress isn't good for you or the baby." Evelyn nodded, though she couldn't quiet the tumult in her mind. "I'll try." "Thank you." In the quiet of her motel room, she lay on the bed, recalling the promise Travis had once made, that he'd do anything to protect their family. Now, on the brink of motherhood, she was uncertain if that promise could ever be trusted again. She stared at the ceiling until her eyelids grew heavy, haunted by the memory of that deserted gas station and the swirl of dust left in Travis's wake. Despite her exhaustion, she feared that this heartbreak was far from over. Morning light peeked through the curtains, and Evelyn woke to the sound of her phone ringing. Confusion hit her. She didn't have a phone. Then she remembered Margaret had given her an old cell she rarely used, topping it up with prepaid minutes. Heart fluttering, Evelyn fumbled for the device on the bedside table. "Hello?" she said, voice thick with sleep. "Evelyn, it's Tara," came the relieved response. "I've got the money wired to a Western Union near you. I texted the address to Margaret's phone last night when you didn't pick up. You should be able to pick it up today." Evelyn pressed a hand to her chest, grateful tears threatening. "Thank you. I can't tell you what this means." "Don't worry about that. Just focus on taking care of yourself. I've been trying to call Travis, but he's not answering now. He seemed desperate the last time we spoke, though." Evelyn's breath caught. "So he's still looking?" "That's what he said. He was babbling about checking every gas station and hospital between Phoenix and L.A. Maybe he's on the road," Tara offered, sounding uncertain. They chatted briefly, then ended the call with promises to stay in contact. Evelyn sat up, feeling a flicker of hope. With funds wired, she could afford the basics, maybe even a flight home, though the idea of traveling so close to her due date was daunting. Later, she joined Margaret and Henry in the motel lobby, explaining the plan to collect the wire transfer. Henry offered to drive the RV there. "We'll make a day of it. Maybe find you a decent meal afterward," he suggested kindly. They wound through Phoenix's busy streets, the RV drawing occasional curious glances. Eventually, they reached a small grocery store with a Western Union counter. Evelyn took a deep breath, stepping inside. The process of claiming the money was straightforward, and a wave of relief hit her when the clerk handed her the funds. For the first time in days, she had some semblance of independence. Back in the parking lot, she thanked Margaret and Henry profusely. "I can repay some of your kindness now," she said, holding out a portion of the cash. "For gas, food, the motel, everything." Margaret gently closed Evelyn's hand over the money. "Use that for your baby. If there's extra, then you can treat us to a meal, but we'll handle the rest. Understood?" Overwhelmed by emotion, Evelyn teared up but nodded. "I can never repay you fully. I hope you know that." They stopped at a local diner, this one bustling with business people and families. It was worlds apart from the remote truck stops where Evelyn had been stranded. Over scrambled eggs and toast, Evelyn checked Margaret's phone for flights to L.A. She found several, but a wave of uncertainty washed over her. Would she be safe to fly at 8 months pregnant? Would Travis even be there if she arrived? Henry noticed her frown. "You don't have to decide this second," he counseled. "Maybe talk to a doctor, see if it's safe." Evelyn agreed, appreciating his calm logic. "And then there's the question of whether I should even tell Travis I'm coming back. Part of me wants to see him face to face, but part of me is—" She hesitated, tears threatening. "I'm afraid of being hurt again." Margaret reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Take one step at a time, dear. For now, let's see about finding you some prenatal care here or a quick checkup. You've been under so much stress." A small spark of determination lit in Evelyn. Yes, that would be wise. They asked the waitress for directions to the nearest clinic, and soon after, Henry piloted the RV into a sprawling medical district. They found a women's health clinic that accepted walk-ins, though the wait time was lengthy. Evelyn sat in the waiting room, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead, flipping through dog-eared magazines. Margaret waited beside her while Henry found a place to park. After nearly an hour, Evelyn's name was called. She stood, heart pounding, and followed a nurse to a small examination room. The nurse took her vitals, her blood pressure slightly elevated, heart rate fast. A doctor arrived, introduced herself as Dr. Yang, and asked about Evelyn's situation. Evelyn offered a carefully edited version, traveling, lost her luggage, needed to ensure the baby was all right. Dr. Yang conducted a brief checkup, using a fetal monitor to listen to the baby's heartbeat. The sound, steady and strong, moved Evelyn to tears. She clasped her hands over her belly, heart flooding with relief. The baby was holding on, unaffected by the chaos unfolding outside. Dr. Yang gently advised Evelyn to reduce stress, stay hydrated, and find consistent prenatal care if she wasn't returning home soon. "You seem healthy for now," the doctor said, "but you're close enough to term that anything could happen quickly. Keep an eye on contractions or fluid changes." Evelyn thanked her, stepping out into the hallway where Margaret waited anxiously. "Everything's fine," she said, voice trembling with gratitude. "She's healthy." Margaret exhaled in relief. Thank goodness. They left the clinic feeling lighter. For once, Evelyn experienced a small victory in the midst of chaos. Although she still carried deep wounds of betrayal and uncertainty about her next steps, she also carried hope, and that, she decided, was enough to keep going for now. Travis stifled a groan as he pulled his SUV into a dusty parking lot in a small Arizona border town. He had spent countless hours zigzagging through side roads and asking about a pregnant woman, showing Evelyn's photo on his phone, an older picture from happier times. Most people just shook their heads or shrugged sympathetically, but offered no real leads. His next stop was a modest diner with a few cars parked outside. It was nearing dinner time, and the last streaks of sunset lit the horizon in brilliant pink and gold. As he entered, the scent of frying onions and coffee greeted him. A lone waitress glanced up from behind the counter, giving him a tight-lipped smile. "Evening," Travis said, trying to sound composed. "I'm looking for someone. My wife. She's pregnant, about 8 months along. Have you seen her by any chance?" The waitress pulled the pen from behind her ear. "Lots of people pass through. Pregnant woman, you say? Don't recall. But you can try Jim, the owner." She motioned to a back booth where an older man in a flannel shirt sipped coffee. Travis approached, heart hammering. "Sir, my name is Travis Prescott. I'm searching for my wife, Evelyn. She's 8 months pregnant, and I left her behind like a fool. I heard she might have come through towns around here." Jim studied Travis for a long moment. "I see a lot of folks. Some old, some young. Can't say I remember a pregnant lady traveling alone." He paused, though there was a young couple that mentioned something about picking up a stranded woman not too far from here. They were heading north. That was days ago. A spark of hope ignited in Travis. "Do you know any more than that?" Jim shrugged. "They didn't stay long, just grabbed coffee and left. Can't be certain it was your wife, but if it was, she's probably well out of this area by now." Travis sank into the seat across from Jim, desperation twisting in his gut. "I don't know where else to look. I've been to gas stations, motels, nothing." He rubbed his eyes, exhaustion evident. "I'm terrified something's happened to her." The old man sighed. "Maybe she found help. She's not wandering alone in the desert, if that couple truly picked her up." He motioned to the waitress for another coffee. "You look like you could use one." Travis mumbled a thanks, gazing at his phone. He wondered if Evelyn had tried to call him. He scrolled through missed notifications, but each time all he found were messages from colleagues or attorneys. His phone's battery was nearly drained from constant searching and calls to random motels. Accepting the steaming mug of coffee, Travis stared into its dark surface. Memories clawed at him, his own childhood with a father who was never around, always chasing deals. He remembered the day his father left for good, slamming the door after a fight with his mother. Travis had vowed never to become that man. Yet he'd done exactly what he dreaded most, abandoning his family in anger. He paid for the coffee and left a hefty tip for the waitress, stepping back outside to the SUV. The sky was fully dark now, stars blinking into view. Leaning against the car, he looked up and spoke to the emptiness. "Evelyn, if you can hear me, I'm sorry. I just want you home safe." His phone buzzed in his pocket. Hoping against hope, he answered without checking the caller ID. A familiar voice crackled on the line. "Travis, it's Tara." His pulse spiked. "Tara, thank God. Have you heard from Evelyn? Is she okay?" Tara's tone was guarded but not hostile. "She called me. She's with some people who helped her. She's safe, but she's still in Arizona. She didn't say where exactly. I just know she mentioned Phoenix." Relief and dread warred in Travis's chest. "Please, Tara, I need to find her. I can't live with myself until I make this right." Tara exhaled. "I told her you've been trying to reach her, but she's hurt, Travis, really hurt. She's not sure she can trust you. Frankly, I don't blame her." His eyes burned with tears he fought to hide. "I understand, but if you talk to her again, give her my number. Tell her I'll come wherever she is. I'll beg on my knees if I have to." Tara was silent for a moment. "I'll pass it on. No promises. Just, if you do find her, don't do anything rash. She's fragile right now, physically and emotionally." "Thank you," he whispered. When he hung up, his mind spun. So Evelyn was alive, in Arizona, possibly Phoenix. That was a start. He climbed into the SUV, turning the key in the ignition. He had to keep moving, keep searching. A mixture of shame and relief flooded his chest. Every mile he drove now felt less like escape and more like penance. He'd face every fear, his fear of failure, his fear of fatherhood, and do whatever it took to find her. Evelyn stood outside the Phoenix motel, gazing at the dusty road that led toward downtown. Margaret was inside, tidying up their room, while Henry had gone to fill the RV's tank. A gentle breeze carried the scent of traffic fumes mixed with desert sand. She felt a quiet tension in the pit of her stomach, a sense that something big was about to happen. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was the spare cell Margaret had given her, and few people had the number. She glanced at the screen and recognized Tara's name. Taking a deep breath, Evelyn answered. "Hey," Tara began, her voice cautious. "I spoke with Travis. I told him you're safe in Phoenix, but not exactly where. He's determined to find you, Evelyn." Evelyn's heart skipped. "I figured he might be, but I don't know if I'm ready to see him." Tara sighed softly. "He sounds desperate, Ev. He told me he'll do anything to make things right. I'm not defending what he did, but he seems genuinely remorseful." Evelyn paced along the walkway. She felt the baby move, a strong kick against her ribs. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I don't know if I can trust him, but at the same time, I can't pretend I don't still care." They talked a little longer, Tara offering support and reiterating that Travis was on the road, scouring Arizona. When the call ended, Evelyn leaned against the motel wall, letting out a shaky breath. She closed her eyes, wrestling with conflicting emotions: betrayal, love, anger, longing. A few minutes later, Margaret emerged. The older woman approached carefully, noticing the tears in Evelyn's eyes. "Bad news?" "No," Evelyn replied, brushing away the moisture on her cheeks. "Tara just said Travis is still looking for me. I'm torn. Part of me wants him to suffer and truly realize what he did, but another part of me just wants him here. Margaret gave Evelyn's shoulder a gentle squeeze. Those two feelings can coexist. You can be hurt and still want reconciliation. Henry's RV rumbled into the parking lot. He climbed out, dusting his hands. "All gassed up," he announced. "Did I interrupt something?" Evelyn filled him in, explaining how Travis might show up any time. Henry pursed his lips, then exchanged a meaningful look with Margaret. "Well, if he does appear, we'll make sure he doesn't cause any commotion. We're here for you, Evelyn." They spent much of the afternoon in the motel room, tension thick in the air. Evelyn tried to distract herself by flipping through channels on the old TV, but her mind kept drifting to possibilities. What if Travis showed up right now? Would he come in with 1,000 apologies, or would he be defensive and angry? As evening approached, Evelyn decided she needed fresh air. "I think I'll take a walk," she told Margaret and Henry. "Just around the block. Clear my head." Armed with Margaret's phone and the motel key, she ventured out. The city street was alive with people heading home from work. Cars honking, bicycles weaving between lanes, folks carrying groceries and briefcases. She found a small park nestled between apartment buildings and settled on a bench beneath a tired palm tree. A group of children played on rusted swings nearby, their laughter a surprising balm to her anxious thoughts. Just as she began to relax, a familiar SUV turned the corner, cruising slowly as if searching for something or someone. Her breath caught in her throat. Travis. Even from a distance, she recognized his silhouette, the broad shoulders, the way he leaned forward with intense focus. Her heart thudded so loudly she feared the children on the playground might hear it. She stayed still, uncertain whether to wave him down or hide. The SUV glided past. For a moment, it seemed he wouldn't spot her. Then he slammed the brakes, their eyes locked across the small patch of grass. Evelyn felt her pulse skyrocket. Travis parked haphazardly near the curb, stumbling out of the car. He looked exhausted, eyes bloodshot, hair disheveled, shirt wrinkled. Yet the moment he saw her, relief and heartbreak warred on his face. He raised a hand, trembling. "Evelyn!" he called, voice thick with emotion. She stood, bracing herself with one hand on her belly. "Travis," she managed, barely above a whisper. Her throat felt dry, and tears prickled her eyes. For a moment, neither moved. Then he took a step closer, like someone approaching a wounded animal, careful not to scare it away. The children on the swings seemed to vanish into the background as the world narrowed to just the two of them. He began, voice faltering. "I'm so sorry. I've been searching everywhere for you." Evelyn's hand clenched around the strap of her small purse. Old fury flickered inside her, colliding with a longing to feel his arms around her once more. "You left me," she said quietly, her words trembling with pain. "You left me in the desert." His face crumpled. "I know. I'll never forgive myself." She saw tears in his eyes, and for the first time, she believed he was truly broken by regret. But the hurt ran deep, and the baby shifted again, reminding her of what was at stake. Questions churned in her mind, but she found herself momentarily speechless, confronted by this man she both loved and feared betraying her again. The tension hung in the air, electrifying. They stood face to face for the first time since that heartbreaking day at the gas station. The desert sun replaced by the neon glow of a city evening. As the last trace of daylight faded, both realized that this moment was a turning point, one that would define the rest of their lives. A dry wind rustled the palm fronds overhead as Evelyn and Travis lingered by the park bench, struggling to find the right words. A few yards away, a child squealed with delight on the swings, but their laughter barely registered. An invisible barrier separated Evelyn from the rest of the world, her focus locked on Travis's shattered expression. He swallowed hard. "I've been to half a dozen towns asking about you. It's haunted me every minute." She believed him. The evidence was there in his bloodshot eyes and the stubble on his cheeks. Still, anger made her pulse pound. "Why did you do it?" she asked, voice tense. "What on earth made you abandon me?" "Us." Travis exhaled, raking a hand through his unkempt hair. "I was consumed by stress. That's no excuse, I know. But my company was on the brink of a huge deal, and I felt everything slipping out of my control. My worst fears, being a failure like my father, came rushing in. Then we argued, and I snapped. I lost sight of everything that mattered." Evelyn's eyes glistened with tears. "You didn't just lose sight, Travis. You actually drove away." Her hand trembled on the bench's back. "I could have been hurt. The baby could have been hurt." His face contorted with guilt. "I know. I've relived that moment 1,000 times, thinking about what might have happened." He took a cautious step forward. "I'm so grateful you're okay." She took a deep breath, letting the night air fill her lungs. "I'm safe only because strangers took me in. They gave me a place to stay, helped me get medical checkups, all the things you should have been there to do." A tear slipped down Travis's cheek, and he quickly wiped it away. "I understand if you never forgive me," he said, voice cracking, "but I'm begging you, please, let me try to make this right. I'll do anything." Before Evelyn could respond, she noticed a familiar RV rumbling down the street. Henry's. He and Margaret had clearly gotten worried when she didn't return to the motel. They pulled over, hazard lights flashing, and Margaret hopped out, rushing toward them. Her gaze flicked between Evelyn and Travis. "Evelyn, is everything all right?" Evelyn nodded stiffly, emotion thick in her throat. "Margaret, this is my husband, Travis." Travis gave a subdued nod. "Thank you for helping her. I owe you more than I can ever repay." Margaret studied Travis's exhausted face. She said nothing for a moment, then gently placed a hand on Evelyn's arm. "You want us to stay or give you two some space?" Evelyn hesitated. She glanced at Travis, still unsure if she could handle this alone. Finally, she nodded. "Would you mind waiting a bit? I'm not ready to be left alone yet." Margaret understood instantly. "We'll be over by the RV if you need us." She walked back, and Henry gave a small wave from the driver's seat, concern evident in his expression. Left alone again, Travis cleared his throat. "Who are they?" "They seem like good people." She told him a condensed version of how she'd met Henry and Margaret, omitting only the darkest moments of her despair. He listened intently, wincing as she described having no phone, no money. "I'm sorry," he murmured again. His voice weighted with regret. "I'm sorry you had to go through that." Evelyn noticed his hands trembling at his sides. She wrestled with the impulse to step closer, to offer comfort. But she reminded herself he was the cause of her suffering, even if he hadn't intended it. "Travis," she began, "I'm not ready to forgive you yet. I don't know when or if that will happen." His eyes flickered with pain. "I understand." She felt the baby move, and a wave of protectiveness surge through her. "If you truly want to make this right, it can't just be about words. You need to change, Travis. You can't keep letting your fear of failure or your obsession with deals control you." He nodded vigorously. "I'll do whatever it takes. If that means I walk away from the company, I will. If it means going to therapy, I will. I want our family to have a chance." A moment of silence passed, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant rumble of cars. Evelyn could see the raw desperation in his eyes. The man standing before her was stripped of his usual confident veneer, replaced by a trembling sincerity she'd rarely seen. "All right," she said softly. "We'll see. For now, I'm staying with Margaret and Henry." They're like my guardians in all this. If you want to be around, you'll have to respect their kindness and my boundaries." Travis's lips curved into a shaky attempt at a smile. "I respect them already." "And I respect you." He took a breath, glancing over at the RV. "Can we head back to the motel? Maybe talk this through in a calmer place." Evelyn hesitated, but then nodded. She signaled to Margaret, who guided the RV closer. When Henry rolled down the window, Travis carefully explained that he'd like to follow them back. Henry didn't say much beyond a curt nod, but his protective stance spoke volumes. With that settled, Evelyn climbed into the RV's passenger seat alongside Margaret. Travis returned to his SUV, parked just behind them. As they set off toward the motel, Evelyn stared through the windshield, heart thumping as if she'd just sprinted a mile. She could hardly believe the moment had come. Travis had returned, broken and repentant, ready to face the fallout of his actions. But whether she could truly let him back into her heart remained an open question, one that lingered with each passing street lamp beneath the Phoenix sky. They pulled into the motel parking lot, neon lights flickering against the evening sky. The air smelled faintly of gasoline and pavement, mixing with the dryness of the desert wind. Evelyn stepped out of the RV, feeling her knees tremble. She watched Travis park his SUV beside the curb, anxiety gnawing at her stomach. Margaret and Henry accompanied Evelyn into the small lobby, where a different clerk, an older man with silver-framed glasses, greeted them politely. Travis lingered a few steps behind, unsure of how to proceed. Evelyn glanced over her shoulder, signaling for him to follow. Henry cleared his throat. "We'll just be in our room if you need us. Take your time." Margaret gave Evelyn's hand a gentle squeeze before guiding Henry away. They disappeared down the hall, leaving her alone with Travis. She heard her own pulse thrumming in her ears. The clerk handed Evelyn her key, and she led Travis to her room. Inside, the space felt cramped under the weight of tension. 2 twin beds with mismatched bedspreads, a small table, and a single lamp provided a subdued glow. Evelyn perched on the edge of one bed, while Travis stayed near the door. He cleared his throat, glancing at the carpet. "I'm not sure what to do or say first," he admitted. "I don't want to push too hard and end up driving you away again." Evelyn studied him. "I need to understand what's going on in your head, why you have so much fear that you do something so reckless." Travis exhaled, moving to sit on the other bed. "I grew up watching my father promise success after success, only to lose everything. When times got tough, he walked out. My mom struggled, and I vowed I'd never be that kind of man. But I've been obsessed with proving I'm not a failure, and ironically, I did exactly what he did, left someone I love when the pressure got too high." She felt a pang of empathy, recalling bits of his past he'd shared before. "So you got scared that our baby's arrival would somehow repeat that cycle?" He nodded, hair falling over his forehead. "The thought of not providing for my family terrifies me. Then we started fighting about how distant I was, and all that fear boiled over. I'm not defending my actions. I'm trying to figure them out myself." Silence stretched between them. The hum of the motel's air conditioner vibrated faintly through the walls. Evelyn folded her hands over her belly, feeling the baby move again. "I understand fear," she said quietly. "I was afraid I'd end up raising a child without love or stability, the way my mother had to. But you took it to another level. You left me at a gas station, 8 months pregnant." Her voice trembled with the memory. Travis bowed his head. "I can't undo what I did. But I promise you, from the bottom of my heart, I won't leave you again. Work won't come before you and the baby anymore. I'm even considering stepping down from day-to-day operations at my company, letting someone else handle the endless deals." She stared at him, taken aback. "You'd do that?" His eyes glistened with honesty. "Yes, if that's what it takes to save our marriage. The deals mean nothing without you." Evelyn's throat tightened, tears forming unbidden. She recalled how Travis used to hold her hand during dinner, how he'd playfully nudge her at a movie theater whenever something funny happened on screen. Somewhere along the line, they lost that spark. Now, seeing his brokenness, she realized how deeply ingrained his fears were. A sudden wave of emotion crashed over her, remembering the terror of being alone on that deserted road. She wanted to fling her arms around him and shout at him all at once. Instead, she let out a sob, burying her face in her hands. Immediately, Travis slid onto the bed beside her, though not touching her without permission. "Evelyn," he whispered, voice trembling, "I'm here, and I'm not leaving." She peeked up, tears streaking her cheeks. "If we try to fix this, it has to be real change, Travis, not just an apology followed by the same patterns. I can't go through this again, especially with a child involved." He nodded fervently. "We can go to counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. I know I need to address my issues or they'll keep coming back. I don't want that life, for me or for you." Another bout of tears overcame her, and this time she didn't resist when he reached out gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. His grip was tentative, as though afraid she'd recoil, but she found a strange comfort in that hesitant touch, a sign he was no longer charging ahead with bluster. They sat like that for a few minutes, not speaking, just breathing in the closeness. Eventually, Evelyn straightened. "I think I've reached my limit for tonight," she said, wiping her eyes. "We can talk more tomorrow." Travis rose, moving toward the door. "I'll find a place nearby," he murmured. "I won't leave the city without telling you." Evelyn nodded, feeling a surge of relief that he didn't expect her to just forgive and forget immediately. "Good night, Travis." He paused with his hand on the doorknob, glancing back. "Good night, Evelyn. Take care of yourself and our baby." Then he slipped into the hallway, leaving her to stare at the closed door, heart pounding. She released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. This felt like a fragile beginning, as if they were relearning how to speak and move around each other. Yet a tiny spark of hope glowed within her that perhaps, beneath all the hurt, they might find a way forward. The next morning, the Arizona sun bathed the motel courtyard in a gentle warmth. Evelyn, awake early, stepped outside to find Margaret and Henry sharing a quiet cup of coffee on a small patio table near the lobby. She joined them, settling into a plastic chair. "Morning," Margaret greeted with a soft smile. "How are you holding up, dear?" Evelyn sipped at the coffee Margaret offered, finding comfort in its rich aroma. "Exhausted, emotionally," she admitted. "But I talked to Travis last night. We're trying to figure things out." Henry nodded, wise eyes reflecting compassion. "We saw him leave. He looked broken down but determined." Evelyn recounted the conversation, describing Travis's vows of change, her own lingering fears, and how they'd left things for now. She also mentioned how Travis planned to find a separate motel room close by, so he could be near if she needed anything. The Carters listened intently, occasionally nodding or exchanging glances. "Well," Margaret said gently, "you don't have to decide the rest of your life this instant, but I'd like to know where that leaves you, in practical terms. We've been traveling for weeks now, and honestly, Henry and I were about ready to head back toward our home in Philadelphia." A twinge of guilt stabbed Evelyn. She realized she'd been relying on their generosity without much thought for their own plans. "Oh, I'm so sorry if I've held you back." Margaret patted her hand. "Nonsense. We wanted to help. But you do need to consider your next steps. If Travis is serious about reconciling, it might be best for you two to figure things out here, or maybe return to Los Angeles. Or maybe you want to go somewhere else altogether. Whatever you decide, we'll support you as best we can." Evelyn swallowed, her mind spinning with options. She needed a stable place to stay as she approached her due date. "I'm not sure I'm ready to drive back to L.A. with Travis." she admitted, glancing at her belly. "But I do have a friend in L.A. who sent me money. She'd help if I got there on my own terms." Henry cleared his throat. "If you trust Travis's sincerity, maybe you could drive back together, but with boundaries, separate accommodations along the way, scheduled stops, that sort of thing. Keep it practical, rather than romantic." Evelyn gave a half-smile at Henry's logic. "That's actually not a bad idea. If he truly wants to prove he's changed, a road trip with structured rules could show me he respects my safety and comfort." Just then, the motel's front door swung open. Travis appeared in yesterday's rumpled clothes, carrying 2 cups of coffee and looking hesitant until he spotted Evelyn. He approached the small patio area. "Morning," he said awkwardly, offering a coffee cup to Evelyn. "I wasn't sure if you already had one." She took it, surprised at the gesture. "Thank you. I was just talking with Margaret and Henry about next steps." Travis nodded, shifting his weight between his feet. "I'm staying at a motel down the block. I'd like to find a better place for you to rest, maybe an Airbnb or short-term apartment, something more comfortable while we figure out where to go next." Evelyn glanced at the Carters, who gave her encouraging smiles, then back to Travis. "That might be good," she said carefully, "but we need to be clear on a few things. I'm not ready to just hop in the car with you and drive off alone. I'd want a plan and some sense of security." He set down his cup, a determined light in his eyes. "I understand. I'll follow any guidelines you set. I can book separate rooms, or we can caravan if you want the Carters along for part of the journey. Whatever it takes to make you feel safe." Evelyn swallowed, relief mingling with the last vestiges of doubt. "Margaret and Henry are heading back east soon. But maybe we can start slow. Find a better motel or short-term rental in Phoenix while we sort out a route home. Let me talk to them privately about their departure and see if traveling with you is feasible." Margaret interjected gently. "No rush, but we will need to head out in the next few days. We'd feel better if we knew you were secure before then." Travis nodded appreciatively. "Of course. Thank you for everything you've done." He looked at Evelyn, voice quieter. "Can we look at some places this afternoon? I can drive, or we can take separate cars, but I'd like to help." She took a breath, heart pounding at how quickly things were unfolding. "All right, let's do that. But separate cars, please. For now." Relief flashed across his face. "Absolutely. I'll swing by after lunch." They agreed on a time, and Travis stepped away, allowing Evelyn some space. Once he was gone, she faced Margaret and Henry. "I guess I should see if he's serious. If he can handle even a small request like separate cars without bristling, it'll tell me a lot." Henry patted her shoulder. "You're handling this admirably. Don't forget to listen to your instincts, though." Margaret gathered their coffee cups. "We'll be here a couple more days. If you need a ride anywhere or if you want us involved in your search for a new place, just say the word." Evelyn nodded, a subdued determination settling over her. Perhaps this was how she'd gauge Travis's progress. Small tests, daily glimpses into whether he could truly rein in his fears and pride. The idea of traveling back to Los Angeles with him still felt daunting, but for the first time, it didn't feel outright impossible. She glanced at her belly, recalling the baby's steady heartbeat at the clinic. Soon, their child would arrive and everything would change again. Before that day came, she needed to be sure that Travis was capable of standing by her side. Taking another sip of coffee, Evelyn braced herself for what lay ahead, fully aware that love and trust might be rebuilt only through patient steps forward, if it could be rebuilt at all. By late afternoon, Evelyn perched in the passenger seat of Margaret and Henry's RV, watching as Travis followed behind in his SUV. He had insisted on helping her scout rental options around Phoenix. Despite her lingering apprehension, She couldn't deny he was genuinely trying to cooperate. They pulled into the driveway of a small, one-story house in a quiet residential neighborhood. A sign out front read, "Furnished rental, short term." The sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawn. Evelyn stepped out, smoothing her blouse over her belly as a friendly realtor came out to greet them. "Hello!" the realtor chirped, smiling broadly. "I'm Nadia. You must be the Prescotts." Evelyn exchanged a quick glance with Travis. She hesitated, unsure whether she still wanted to use his last name in public. "Yes," she said finally. Deciding not to complicate the moment, Nadia led them inside. The place was modest but welcoming. 2 small bedrooms, a cozy living room with a sofa, and a fully equipped kitchen. It wasn't fancy, but it was worlds better than the cramped motel. After a brief tour, Nadia explained the rental terms, a month-to-month lease, utilities included. Evelyn felt a flicker of hope. This could be the peaceful environment she needed to figure out her next move. Margaret and Henry lingered by the door, letting Evelyn and Travis talk quietly. "What do you think?" Travis asked, voice low. "I could cover the rent, and we'd have more space. You'd be safe here until we figure out what comes next." She studied his face. Every time she expected to see a flash of impatience or control, he surprised her by looking genuinely concerned. "It's nice," she admitted. "I could see myself staying here a while, but you and I aren't ready to live together yet." Travis nodded quickly. "I know. I can find a place nearby, maybe an extended stay hotel. I just want to be close enough to help if you need anything." Evelyn inhaled slowly, relief coursing through her. "That would work. And if you're serious about change, you'll respect my space." He swallowed, then offered a hint of a smile. "I will." They concluded the tour, and Evelyn agreed to a 1-month lease, with the option to extend if needed. Nadia had the paperwork ready, and within an hour, Evelyn found herself signing pages of documents, Travis quietly handing over the deposit. Margaret looked on, her expression relieved. After the final signature, Nadia handed Evelyn the keys. "Congratulations. I'll just need a quick call from you later to set up a move-in date. It can be as early as tomorrow morning, if that works." Evelyn cradled the keys in her hand, marveling at how quickly her circumstances had shifted yet again. With a place to stay, she could see a path forward, slow but tangible. Travis escorted her back to the RV, where Margaret and Henry waited. "So," Henry ventured, "how do you feel about this next step?" "It's," Evelyn began, searching for the right word, "promising, scary but promising." Travis hovered nearby, careful not to crowd her. "I can help you move your things tomorrow, rent some basic groceries and supplies. Then I'll stay out of your hair unless you call." Margaret gave Evelyn a discreet thumbs up, impressed by Travis's uncharacteristic humility. Evelyn managed a small smile. "I appreciate that." "Let's do it." They parted ways in the driveway, Margaret and Henry planning to return to the motel for one last night, while Travis drove off to find a longer-term motel in a nearby neighborhood. Evelyn watched him go, her heart constricting with mingled gratitude and residual anger. She wasn't sure how long it would take for her to fully forgive, if ever. But his willingness to respect boundaries was the first tangible proof he might be changing. Once in the RV, Margaret turned to her. "You did well today. You set limits, and he followed them." Evelyn gripped the keys tightly. "He did. Let's hope he keeps it up." The drive back to the motel was quieter than usual. Henry navigated through Phoenix's dusk-lit streets, the sky awash with lavender and orange hues. Evelyn stared at the cityscape, thinking about tomorrow and how she'd move into that rental. She pictured its small kitchen, imagining herself nesting for the baby's arrival, yet underlying every thought was the knowledge that the real test would come later. Would Travis maintain his promises when another stressful situation arose? Would she find the strength to allow him back into her heart fully? For now, she clung to the small victory of a peaceful day and the promise of a safe space to call her own, both of which had seemed impossible just days ago. She smiled at Margaret, who patted her hand in silent support. Tonight, Evelyn would rest, and tomorrow she would unlock the door to a new chapter. A place where she might discover if rebuilding trust was truly within reach, or if the fractures in her marriage ran too deep to mend. Sunlight poured through the sheer curtains of Evelyn's new rental house, illuminating a cozy living room, still half empty of furniture. She sat cross-legged on the sofa, flipping through a baby name book borrowed from the local library. The gentle hum of the air conditioner provided a soothing backdrop, yet a subtle undercurrent of anticipation coursed through her. She had spent her first night in this place alone. Well, not entirely alone, she thought, pressing a hand to her 8-month belly. A tap on the front door made her heart jump. Rising carefully, she moved to let in Margaret, who arrived balancing grocery bags. "Hope you don't mind," Margaret said, smiling. "I thought you could use a few essentials. Eggs, bread, fresh fruit, nothing fancy, but enough to get by." Evelyn exhaled with relief. "Thank you. You read my mind. I've been so busy settling in, I forgot to pick up anything substantial." She gestured around the room at the cardboard boxes and a couple of borrowed chairs. "It's not much, but it's starting to feel like mine." Margaret set the groceries on the modest kitchen counter. "Henry's out in the RV, checking on our route back east. We'll be leaving early tomorrow." Evelyn's chest tightened at the thought of losing the two people who had been her lifeline these past days. "I can't imagine navigating all this without you," she admitted softly. "You rescued me in a way I never expected." Margaret patted Evelyn's arm affectionately. "We didn't do much, dear. You had the strength all along. We were just here to remind you of it. I'm confident you'll be fine, and we're just a phone call away." Evelyn nodded, forcing a smile. "I know. Still, I'll miss you both." As they unpacked groceries, a car door slammed outside. Evelyn glanced through the window to see Travis stepping out of his SUV, a paper bag in hand. Her heart gave a small flutter. He had respected her boundaries for the last 2 days, coming over only when invited to help with tasks like setting up the new TV or assembling nursery furniture. She noticed he looked more rested. He wore a simple polo shirt and jeans, an outfit that made him seem less corporate and more grounded. He approached the open front door tentatively. "Morning," he said, offering a polite nod to Margaret before turning to Evelyn. "I brought some fresh pastries from that bakery you liked, and extra bottles of water. I remember the doctor said you need to stay hydrated." Her guarded gratitude mixed with a hint of warmth. "Thank you," she said, taking the bag. The smell of warm bread drifted through the living room, momentarily chasing away heavier thoughts. "I appreciate it." Margaret excused herself, promising to return later. Once she was gone, the house felt quieter. Evelyn led Travis to the kitchen. "I was about to make coffee," she offered. He smiled hesitantly. "Sure." As she prepared the coffee maker, Travis glanced around at the boxes and half-furnished space. "I can help unpack if you want, or maybe run some errands." Evelyn poured water into the machine. "Let's just start with coffee and see how the day goes," she replied, her tone neutral but not unkind. He nodded, leaning against the counter. "How did you sleep last night?" He was trying to be gentle, she realized, effortful in a way that reminded her of when they first started dating. "Better than I expected," she said. "I still wake up from time to time, thinking about everything. But the house is quiet, and that helps." A flicker of remorse crossed his face. "I know it might take a while for you to feel safe around me again. I'm ready for that journey, no matter how long." She sighed, turning to face him. "Travis, It's not just about feeling safe physically, it's about emotional safety too. I need to know you won't shut me out or blow up at me when life gets stressful." He took a moment, his gaze dropping to the floor. "I understand. I'm working with a counselor. Online sessions for now until I can find someone local. Maybe we could do couples counseling eventually, when you're ready." Evelyn's eyes widened slightly. It was the first she'd heard of this concrete step. "You already started," he nodded. "I realized after everything that I needed professional help for my issues, my fear of failure, my tendency to prioritize work above all else. I'm tackling it head on." Emotions welled inside her: relief, lingering hurt, tentative admiration. She turned off the coffee maker as it finished dripping, then poured 2 cups. Handing him one, she carefully looked into his eyes. "That's good. It helps to know you're serious." They sat at the small kitchen table, sipping coffee in a contemplative silence. For once, there was no rush, no frantic need to prove or demand anything. Evelyn appreciated the unhurried moment, a gentle calm she'd missed in their relationship for a long time. After a few minutes, Travis asked, "You mentioned you need to pick up some baby items. Maybe I can help. I saw a children's store nearby." She weighed the offer. "That would be nice," she said eventually, "but I want to invite Margaret and Henry, too, so they can see I'm in good hands before they leave tomorrow. They deserve that peace of mind." Travis nodded, a determined set to his jaw. "Anything that makes you comfortable, Evelyn." His sincerity left her feeling an unexpected warmth. For now, she decided to let herself appreciate the small steps forward, like sharing a cup of coffee without their usual friction. Tomorrow still held uncertainty, but at least this morning felt like a fragile, hopeful beginning. A soft breeze drifted through the parking lot of the children's store, where a colorful sign read, "Baby's First Stop." Evelyn stood by the entrance, waiting for Travis to park the SUV. Margaret and Henry had followed in their RV, eager to help her pick out essentials. The storefront windows displayed baby blankets, tiny outfits, and plush toys, symbols of a new life about to enter the world. Inside, a bell jingled above the door. Rows of pastel-colored merchandise stretched before them. Evelyn felt a swirl of emotions: excitement, nervousness, and a lingering ache from all she'd endured. She glanced back at Travis, who was scanning a shelf of baby bottles with focused intensity. Margaret sidled up, placing a reassuring hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "You doing okay? I know these places can feel overwhelming." Evelyn nodded, exhaling a shaky laugh. "It's a lot to take in. I used to imagine coming here with Travis, picking out things for our baby, but never pictured it would be under these circumstances." Travis overheard and moved closer. "We can make new memories," he said quietly. Starting today, Henry grabbed a shopping cart and they began browsing. Margaret pointed out soft onesies, while Henry examined strollers, testing wheels and handles with a seriousness that made Evelyn chuckle. "I'd say he's having fun," she whispered to Margaret. Nearby, Travis studied diaper bags, carefully reading labels about functionality and durability. Now and then, he'd glance at Evelyn, seeking her opinion. She offered hesitant smiles, trying to let him in without ignoring her own reservations. Each small interaction was another chance for him to prove his respect. After nearly an hour, they reached the checkout with a cart full of supplies: newborn diapers, gentle baby shampoo, a cozy blanket adorned with tiny stars, and even a few maternity items for Evelyn's comfort. Travis took out his wallet, and she didn't protest this time. Perhaps allowing him to provide was a sign she was opening a crack in the armor around her heart. Henry stepped outside to catch some air, while Margaret accompanied Evelyn to the store's small seating area near the exit. Travis followed, cradling the bags. I can load these into the SUV, he offered, glancing between them. Evelyn nodded, handing him the keys. Thanks. Once he was out of earshot, Margaret turned to Evelyn with a gentle smile. You know, dear, this is the first time I've seen you two interact without tension. Evelyn exhaled, pressing a hand to her belly. It's been surprisingly calm. He's trying so hard. Margaret sat beside her. Remember that it takes more than a few days of effort to heal. It's a daily choice, both for him and for you. If you decide to rebuild this marriage, there will be hurdles, but every step like this helps. Warmth flooded Evelyn's chest. She leaned her head against Margaret's shoulder. Thank you. You and Henry have given me more support than I ever thought possible. Margaret patted her hand. We'll always be rooting for you, wherever we are. A moment later, Travis reappeared, keys in hand. Everything's packed. Are you ready to go? He asked, his voice respectful, not rushed. Evelyn stood carefully. Yes, let's head back to the house. I promised these two they could take a quick look around before they leave town tomorrow. They returned to Evelyn's new rental, where Henry parked the RV along the curb. Travis carried in the shopping bags, placing them gently on the kitchen table. Margaret and Henry did a final check, admiring the simple but cozy rooms, the half-built crib in the spare bedroom, and the neat stack of baby items in the corner. Eventually, Margaret cleared her throat, her eyes shining with emotion. Well, we should probably start our drive soon. It's a long way back to Philadelphia. Evelyn's heart twisted. She wrapped Margaret in a tender hug. I can't thank you enough. Her voice shook with gratitude. You saved me, literally. Margaret brushed back tears. Take care of yourself, okay? Henry stepped in for a firm handshake with Travis, then folded Evelyn into a warm embrace. Keep us posted on the baby, he said, voice thick with emotion. You've got our number any time, day or night. Outside, under the Arizona sun, they waved goodbye as the RV rumbled off. For a moment, Evelyn stood on the front porch, hand raised until the vehicle vanished around the corner. She felt Travis's presence behind her, quiet and steady. He spoke softly, They're wonderful people. I can see why you trust them so much. She turned, acknowledging the swirl of emotions in her chest, sadness at losing her guardians, cautious hope that Travis might fill some of that void. Yes, she murmured. They're family in every sense that matters. His gaze flicked from the empty street to her. I know I have a lot of work to do to earn even a fraction of that trust. But I promise, I won't stop trying. She studied the lines of worry and determination etched on his face. Then let's keep going, she said, step by step. As they went back inside, Evelyn felt both a pang of loss and a glimmer of possibility. The Carters were gone, the people who had literally rescued her. Now it was up to her and Travis to shape the next phase of this journey. In a way, life had come full circle, from abandonment to rediscovery, and now she stood on the threshold of an uncertain future. But for the first time in weeks, she realized she was no longer facing it alone. Days melted into a tentative routine. Travis rented a small suite in a nearby extended-stay hotel, allowing him to visit Evelyn daily without encroaching on her space. He arrived most mornings with groceries or something for the baby's room. Some days, he'd text first, ensuring she was up to a visit. It was an unspoken test. He was letting her control the pace. One afternoon, while Evelyn was folding a freshly washed set of pastel baby clothes, she heard a quiet knock on her front door. Opening it, she found her next-door neighbor, a middle-aged woman with salt and pepper hair and a warm smile. "Hi there," the neighbor said, extending a plate of cookies. "I'm Karen. Saw you moving in. Thought I'd welcome you." Evelyn blinked in surprise. Back in Los Angeles, living in a high-rise penthouse, she barely knew her neighbors beyond a quick nod in the elevator. "That's very kind. I'm Evelyn." Karen's gaze flicked to Evelyn's belly. "Expecting soon." Very soon, Evelyn admitted with a small laugh. About a month, give or take. Well, if you need anything, ice, a ride, an extra set of hands, I'm right next door. Karen smiled brightly. I have 2 grown kids, so I've been through it all. A rush of warmth spread through Evelyn. Thank you, I might take you up on that. The sense of community in this modest Phoenix neighborhood caught Evelyn off guard. Here she was, miles from the life she once considered successful, yet feeling a connection she rarely felt back home. She accepted the cookies gratefully, heart lighter than it had been in a while. Later, Travis arrived, letting himself in after a soft knock. He noticed the plate of cookies on the counter. What's this? He asked with curiosity. Neighborly kindness, Evelyn said, offering a slice of the day's events. Her name's Karen. She has older kids and said she's willing to help if I need anything. Travis's face reflected a subdued awe. That's really nice. So different from Elle. Hey, huh? She nodded, setting the cookies aside. Yes. And I could get used to it. They migrated to the living room, where boxes of baby supplies still cluttered the floor. Travis kneeled to assemble a small playpen. He fumbled with the instructions, occasionally glancing up at Evelyn for guidance. She watched him work, noticing how he slowed down to read each step carefully, much like his attempts to slow down in their conversations. As he attached a mesh panel to the frame, he spoke in a low voice. I had another counseling session this morning. We talked about the fear of repeating my father's mistakes. The therapist said it might help if I confronted that fear head-on, by imagining what it would take to walk away from a deal if it meant more time with my family. Evelyn kept folding a baby blanket, nodding. That's a big step. How did you feel? He paused, letting a screwdriver rest in his hand. Terrified, he admitted. My company's success has always been my definition of safety, my way of guaranteeing I wouldn't be like him. But maybe I'm realizing success doesn't have to consume every second of my life. A flicker of hope ignited in Evelyn's chest. It doesn't, she said quietly. I just want you to be present. We don't need all the luxuries if it means losing ourselves in the process. He turned back to the playpen, focusing on a tricky screw. I'm starting to see that. A moment later, he fit the final piece, standing back to admire his work. Done! It's not fancy, but it'll keep her safe. She nodded, offering a small, genuine smile. That's all we need. In the following days, they found more ways to connect. A quick trip to a local farmer's market introduced them to fresh produce and friendly vendors. And Travis tried cooking a simple meal in Evelyn's kitchen, something he hadn't done in years. They discovered a quiet park nearby, where they walked in the evenings to ease Evelyn's back pain, exchanging light conversation about names, pediatricians, and how to handle sleepless nights. Through these shared tasks, a slow but meaningful bond re-emerged. There were still awkward moments, times when Travis seemed ready to snap back into business mode or when Evelyn's distrust flared unexpectedly. But each time they paused, breathed, and tried talking it through instead of bottling it up. One evening, as the sky turned pink beyond the palm trees in the yard, Karen stopped by to deliver a few gently used baby items, clothes, a swing, and a bouncer. Evelyn thanked her, touched again by the sense of community. Travis helped carry them in, shaking Karen's hand in genuine gratitude. It felt like the beginnings of a support network she'd never known she needed. When Karen left, Travis glanced at Evelyn, a soft wonder in his eyes. You know, for the first time in a long while, I feel like I'm not just chasing something. I'm here. Her heart fluttered at his sincerity, though she still guarded it, mindful of the past. I'm glad, she replied, allowing a gentle warmth to creep into her tone. They stood in the living room, surrounded by baby items, the scent of fresh laundry and the hush of an Arizona evening. Outside, a car door slammed, and somewhere down the street a child's laughter echoed. In this new community, in this simple rental house, Evelyn sensed the possibility of genuine healing, a slow, cautious rebuilding of trust that day by day might lead them toward the family life she'd once believed they could have. Night settled gently over the Phoenix neighborhood. Through the front window, Evelyn could see porch lights flickering on along the street, illuminating cacti and gravel yards. She sat on her sofa, legs propped up on cushions, the baby feeling heavier each day. Travis was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner, his attempt at a chicken stir-fry that had turned out surprisingly good. She closed her eyes for a moment, reflecting on how much had changed in just a couple of weeks. Gone was the frantic storm of anger, betrayal, and desperation that once dominated her days. In its place lived an atmosphere of delicate peace, like a wound that had begun to heal, tender but no longer raw. Across the room, Travis dried his hands on a towel and approached. "Need anything?" he asked gently. "Water? A snack? Another pillow?" She opened her eyes, a small smile forming. "I'm okay for now." "My ankles might disagree, though," he offered a sympathetic chuckle, setting the towel aside. "Let's see if propping them up helps." He hurried off, returning with an extra cushion. Carefully, he lifted her feet and adjusted the pillows beneath them. The gesture was so different from his old, perpetually distracted self that she felt a lump rise in her throat. They settled into a companionable silence, listening to the soft chirp of crickets outside. Then Travis cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about what the future looks like. For us, I know we're taking it slow, but we're also so close to the baby's arrival." She nodded, gazing down at her belly. The baby had been particularly active tonight, shifting and pressing with little feet. "I think about that too. Sometimes I imagine going back to L.A. Other times I wonder if we should stay here a bit longer, because I found a sort of comfort in this neighborhood." Travis leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "If you asked me a month ago, I'd have insisted we return to L.A. for the company's sake. But the truth is, seeing how neighbors actually care here, how you're calmer, I don't want to uproot you before you're ready." A sense of gratitude washed over her. "Thank you for saying that." He took a slow breath. "Don't get me wrong, there's still a lot waiting for me in L.A., but I've pulled back on my roles, delegated more, and it hasn't fallen apart yet." A tentative smile crossed his face, as though he surprised even himself. "Maybe I needed to see that my worth isn't tied to working 24/7. Relief and a touch of affection welled up inside her. "I'm glad you realize that." "You're more than your job, Travis." He looked down, a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. "This counselor I've been talking to suggested I try to rebuild what I tore down, not just with you, but in myself. She gave me strategies to handle anxiety and that panicked feeling of needing to be perfect." He paused. "I don't feel fixed, but I do feel like I'm on a path." Evelyn studied him, recalling the man she married 5 years ago, driven, yes, but also tender and full of dreams of having a loving family. Back then, their shared ambition felt exciting. Over time, it twisted into something that nearly destroyed them. Yet here he was, humbly trying, and she could see genuine determination in his eyes. "Travis," she said softly, "I'm proud of you for taking those steps." "It can't be easy." He swallowed hard, reaching for her hand. She let him take it, noticing how his touch now conveyed gentleness rather than urgency. "It's not easy," he admitted, voice thick with emotion. "But every day I wake up, I remember that the person I hurt most was the person I vowed to protect. That realization keeps me going." They sat quietly for a moment, fingers entwined, no words needed. Eventually, Evelyn shifted, a wave of pressure and discomfort passing through her. She winced, Ow, that was a strong one. Travis's face tensed with concern. Contraction. Evelyn exhaled, waiting for the sensation to subside. Not sure. Might be Braxton Hicks again, but it's definitely stronger than usual. He stood, all anxious energy. Do you want to call the doctor? Hospital? She shook her head slowly, though her heart pounded. Let's wait a bit. It could be a false alarm, but maybe we should get the hospital bag ready, just in case. They both realized how real the moment was becoming. Life was about to shift irreversibly. Their daughter would soon arrive, and with her, the chance to forge a new kind of family. The hum of the neighbor's air conditioner kicked on outside, a comforting reminder that life still went on around them. Travis crouched beside her, placing a hand on her stomach. The baby responded with a fluttering kick. Their eyes met, brimming with anticipation and unspoken hope. Whatever happens, he murmured, we face it together, right? Evelyn let out a shaky breath, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. She thought of the desert gas station, the terror of abandonment, the kindness of strangers, and the fragile bridge they had built in the aftermath. Everything had led to this moment, a vow not just between them, but to the life growing within her. She gave a firm nod, pressing his hand more tightly against the curve of her belly. Yes, she whispered, voice trembling with both vulnerability and determination. Together. Outside, the Arizona night remained still, as if holding its breath. Within the small rental home, Travis and Evelyn embraced, bound by a promise of forgiveness, growth, and love. Their journey had been marked by deep scars and startling revelations, yet as they faced the imminent arrival of their child, they discovered a profound truth. The unbreakable bond of family could triumph over even the darkest mistakes, so long as they chose to keep their hearts open and each other close. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.